There we go. There was a little funkiness with the stream. But now I've got it worked out, so we're all good. Hello, my beautiful blossoms, blooms, and buds. Welcome. I'm so excited that you're here. We're almost done with Little Mushroom. Like, that's so crazy to me. Oh my goodness, there's 6 people here. Wow, hello. But yeah, we're going to be doing the epilogue today. But before that, I've got a couple extra things. One of which is just the legalities. I do not own. Hello, Chi Kiki. Hello, Razor. Welcome. I don't own anything connected to Little Mushroom legality-wise. I only own the book that's in front of me and my time doing this. So please don't come for me for any legalities or the like. I'm just doing this for fun. This is a very chill stream. I will be kind of commenting. I will be responding to the chat like you see me doing now. And just making little side comments. If that's not your cup of tea, this may not be either. But I hope you stay and give it a chance anyway. But yes, welcome to my book garden. Actually, welcome to my basement. But we're already here, so it's all the same, right? But yeah, so because this is our last stream for Little Mushroom, not my last stream, but I kind of wanted to do something special. So I was so excited that this arrived in time. But this is actually the manga edition, which I was unsure if it existed, but it actually came. So this is going to be in the background for a while, but I wanted to show you guys some of the cool things that came with it. So, like some of the pictures, so like there was this bookmark that I could use today, I guess, of, here, let's focus, on G. And then we have Lu Fang, being all handsome. And then this one's actually like a stand, but it's very thin paper. Here, let me cover my face. Maybe it'll focus more. Oh, goodness. This camera. Oh, goodness. And then they had a couple really cool pictures with it. Come on, focus. Focus. I think that's the best it's going to get. It's got kind of like sparkle texture, so that might also be messing with it. But yeah, I just thought that was pretty cool. And then it had like a wall poster, so I'll probably pop this up on the wall behind me after this. So he's so pretty. Or Anja. But yeah, so that's just one of the cool things. But then something I did that was unrelated. Well, 2 things. So I actually ended up making a jacket, kind of Little Mushroom jacket. The bottom's pretty cool too. But then just kind of as this commemoration of this, you got just one more chapter, even though it's like 6. But I thought it was kind of funny. So, all right, that's all the surprises I had lined up. So now we will get to go ahead and get to it. Thank you, Chi Kiki. I love it too. It was really cool. The front's got these little mushrooms I hand sewed on and all that. But yes, the moment you've all been waiting for, the epilogue. All right. Oh boy. Epilogue 1. Let me see you give birth to another one. There's another one of our interesting titles. Anji sank into a dream. He had dreamed this kind of dream a very long time ago, on the day he left Lu Fang. Sometimes, although it was clearly daytime and he was awake, he would suddenly sink into dreamland again. They were probably the hallucinations of a dying man, but he didn't mention them to Polly. The inexplicable bloody coughs, high fevers, and various aches and pains had already consumed too much of Polly's mental energy. In the dream, his body was divided into two, much like the leech in the past. One half was at the Highland Rescue Institute, while the other half was at some unknown place, free from pain and free from the cumbersome human body. In the dream, he had neither eyes nor ears, no nose, or any human perceptivity. Perceptivity, there we go. It was the same kind of feeling as when he was just born, buried in the rain-soaked soil. Mushrooms had their own senses, which could not be described in human language. He knew that he wasn't far from Lu Fang. That must have been a delusion caused by him leaving Lu Fang, but it did not hinder him from getting closer to Lu Fang in his dream. This dream wasn't always happy either. Sometimes he was put in a sealed container, accompanied by an ice-cold liquid. The very beginning, it was Dr. G, his side, and then later it was always Polly, along with many others who came and went. He had nothing to do. If Lu Fang was nearby, Anji would wrap around him, but if not, he would soak in the liquid, thinking back on his own life. Those distant memories floated to the surface, in the soil, in the rainy season, in the winter, and in the base. He would get a little closer to Lu Fang when he recalled certain things, and Lu Fang's fingers would touch his haipe. It seemed as though he had managed to stay together peacefully with the man at last. He was on the edge of wakefulness the entire time, but he didn't wish to wake up. In the real world, he and Lu Fang could never be like this. But after he thought back on his own memories for the 100th time, there was no dream he could dream, so he chose to wake up. He discovered that he was still alive. When he thought back to that day now, he no longer remembered it. The fluctuation of emotions had made many other places go blank. He only remembered that he was standing at the door and that Lu Fang had turned around amidst a patch of lush spring greenery. He locked eyes with him in that manner, not able and not daring to step forward. He had dreamed too many dreams, and he had tried scooping up the fragile full moon in the water too many times. Until Lu Fang walked up to him. When this man wasn't around, he had cried many times. Sometimes his heart would violently tremble when thinking of him, but now, when he truly met with Lu Fang, the corners of his lips curled up in spite of himself. That's really cute. That's so cute. He reached out to touch Lu Fang's shape. He couldn't tell anymore if he had gotten thinner or if he had become haggard. It had been too long. He hadn't met with this man in far too long. It wasn't until then the tears slipped down from the corners of his eyes. He withdrew his hand and looked blankly at Lu Fang before being wrapped up in a frontal hug and having the tears wiped from his cheeks. He rested against Lu Fang's shoulder, voice hoarse as he softly called out his name. "It's me," Lu Fang said. The people in the laboratory had congratulated him. Unexpectedly, Polly had brought a man back from the dead. He couldn't imagine the involved principles at all. The people in the laboratory told him lots of words like genes, frequencies, samples, and such. It was all incomprehensible to him, but human technology had always been very miraculous, so he simply accepted it. 3 years had already passed since he jumped into the Simpson cage. The outside world had calmed as well. The age of genetic disorder ended with the single toll of a bell. His frequency was transmitted all over the world, but whether it was for good or ill could not be determined, for all tangible things were infected by the frequency at that moment and stabilized. People were always people, and a monster was always that type of monster. Polymorphic mutations could occur, but the dominant consciousness was always that one that had been in control when the bell tolled.
As for why this was the case, Polly's explanation was that after many experiments and comparisons, the frequency obtained by the Simpson cage approached a definition of matter itself. For example, when facing an apple and an orange, humans knew that this was an apple and that was an orange. But the apple itself did not know that it was an apple, and the orange itself did not know that it was an orange either. They themselves would never know. Only humans knew. Just like how cicadas did not know of spring or autumn, humankind's field of biology was only a flawed, superficial analysis of the surface. They also had no way of knowing what constituted themselves or what defined them as humans. It was a framework that four-dimensional creatures could not understand. However, by means of the Simpson cage's analysis of elemental particles, they briefly glimpsed a negligible reflection of the truth and glimpsed traces of the true meanings, then grasped some noteworthy frequencies. Sorry about that. I apparently had trouble with grasped. In this symphony of the universe, humankind was the musical note that was most easily destabilized by other creatures, whereas he, a mushroom that somehow had its own consciousness, was the stable frequency that could contain everything. When this stability was bestowed upon the entire world, a brief peace arrived. "This is chance," Polly said. "Chance is destiny, and living is fortuitous." When Anji heard that, he had just been fed a piece of peeled apple by Lu Feng. "Not potato soup? What?" With only a single bite, the freshly picked apple gushed with juice that was sweet and slightly tart. He forgot what he was about to say, and Lu Feng fed him another piece. "Then what about oranges?" he asked. "What do oranges taste like?" Lu Feng had said, "Wait until autumn." Polly invited them out along with their apples and future oranges. On the way back to his room, Anji ate half of an apple and left the other half for Lu Feng. God, they're just so cute. Like, they're so sweet, unintentionally, to each other. He had intended to cut it into pieces for the colonel, but Lu Feng did not let him touch the knife. On this matter, Anji did not argue with the colonel. If the other party were not Lu Feng, he actually would not really have wanted to cut the apple. He was drowsy, for it was time for an afternoon nap. But he could not sleep. As he held a tablet, he scrolled downward. Stored within it were the documents he had scraped together from various places over the 10 days since he woke up. The electronic version of Alliance Daily, the research records copied from Dr. G's computer, the laboratory manuals copied from Polly's computer, along with many other similar things. Oh, I hope Dr. G is still alive. Lu Feng sat down at his side, and he swiftly turned, not allowing the man to see. Lu Feng let out a soft chuckle, then cut off the remaining half of the apple and fed it to Anji. Although the apple was very tasty and the colonel very good-looking, Anji did not want Lu Feng to be next to him while he was reading the documents. He was always paranoid, thinking that Lu Feng was looking at his screen. But the hateful thing was, when he woke up, he discovered that Lu Feng had taken over the room he used to have at the research institute. Everything in the room was identical to the way it was before he died, but its owner had changed. He tried to have Lu Feng move into the room next door, but Lu Feng expressionlessly told him, "If you don't want to share a room with me, you can continue sleeping in the tank of nutrient solution," leaving Anji at a loss for words. It's one way to get your boyfriend to move in with you. There's always a tank for you. It had been 3 years. The past 3 years had not softened this man's character at all, not even the slightest bit. As a result, he could only share a room, a desk, and a bed with the colonel. In the end, he got paranoid to the point where he could no longer continue reading the documents, and was so drowsy that he had to sleep. Boring. On the bed, with Lu Feng holding him from behind, he dazedly stared at the white walls. The colonel's voice was like snowpack just beginning to thaw. Where do you wish to go? I wish... Unji looked at the wall, slight confusion in his gaze. He had somewhere he wished to go. And it was a place that, apart from himself, only Lu Feng knew about. He hadn't mentioned it even to Polly. I wish to go find Anzi, he murmured. In the cave where everything began, Anzi's bones were still waiting for him. He had many things he wished to say to Anzi. He remembered every word that Anzi had said to him. Anzi had said that he was someone whose life had no meaning. He wished to recount the northern base's dramatic changes to Anzi, and he wished to tell him of the source of that last bell toll. If he hadn't met Lu Feng or Anzi, none of that would have happened. Just like that, destiny tossed and turned within countless coincidences. But the abyss was so big, he couldn't find him, and nobody was willing to accompany him in his search, so it would forever be an unattainable wish. But I can't find him, he mumbled. I can't do anything, and I don't remember where I left him. I can, Lu Feng said into his ear. Let's go find him. Anji opened his eyes wide. Everything was like a dream. The next day, after they bid farewell to Polly, their armored vehicle was airdropped by a transport plane into the exact middle of the abyss. The crew commander was the PL-1109's pilot. Before bidding farewell, he had insisted that they remember to search for traces of Hubbard and Tonglan as well. Ever since the war in which monsters laid siege to the research institute, they both had been confirmed missing. Now, the only thing they were certain of was that although Tonglan had suffered heavy wounds, he was still alive. Their bodies were nowhere to be found for miles around. I strongly suspect that they went off to recuperate, then got lost, and then laid eggs. They're putting facts together and making one last deduction. The crew commander flew the transport plane away. I knew it! Though it would be very interesting if Tonglan did lay eggs. Lu Feng opened the armored vehicle's door and helped Anji down. The ground was covered with velvet-like grass that rose past their ankles. Anji looked into the distance. The late spring, lush greenery stretched through the abyss as far as the eye could see. Primeval winds shook the branches and leaves, and the sound of birds flapping their wings traveled from afar. He had come to this place again. He looked at Lu Feng. Lu Feng had come with him, which surprised him even more. He asked, Why have we come here? Lu Feng lifted his eyebrows slightly. Didn't you want to come? For a long time, Anji said. Don't you only do things for the sake of humanity? The trial court has been dissolved. Lu Feng looked at him. If there are more wars, or when they need me, I'll return to the base then. Those cold green eyes contained neither suffering nor resentment or anything else. It was like he had lost something, yet also as if he had been relieved of a heavy burden. Anji reached out and plucked a soft fallen leaf from Lu Feng's shoulder, then found himself effortlessly wrapped in Lu Feng's embrace. Now I wish to be with you, he heard the colonel say in the silence. Why? He asked in a small voice as he hugged Lu Feng and rested his chin on Lu Feng's shoulder. He didn't say plainly what he was asking, but he knew that Lu Feng would know. It seems that the two of them had never needed to say much, but still understood each other. He knew that he liked Lu Feng, but he didn't know why Lu Feng would like him. Lu Feng took one step forward, and Anji ended up with his back pressed to the car. He looked up at Lu Feng. Their eyes were still as quiet and clear as when they first met at the base's gate. Lu Feng looked at him for a long time. Throughout those 3 years, he often dreamed of that day. Back then, Lu Feng's soul was deeply trapped in a thorny mire, the edges of losing control and unable to do anything about it. And in that state, he met Anji. Anji was a person, a xenogenic, and a monster. Lu Feng should have killed him, yet he also should not have. He was everything that could not be defined, the wildest possibility, and was like all the people in the pool of blood that had come before him. "Why did you walk into the Simpsons' cage?" he suddenly asked. Anji slowly searched his thoughts, then shook his head. "I don't know," he said. Then Anji asked in a small voice, "So you don't know either?" "I do know," Lu Feng murmured, putting his forehead to Anji's. "Because you're a little mushroom." The perfunctory reply made Anji lift his gaze in discontentment, but after seeing everything surging in those old green eyes, his gaze softened in spite of himself. In the abyss, all things grew. In fact, he remembered every word Polly had said. The entire universe was a place of constant disturbance, and the consciousness of humans were ephemeral lights and fragmentary shadows produced within a brief period of stability. The story was taking place in a book, but the book was currently being burned to ashes. The frequency of the magnetic field was like cold air, resisting the scorching heat. His frequency turned its pages into asbestos, allowing it to keep intact within the blaze. But the flames still burned. They were unknown waves, unpredictable disturbances. They would still continue to come, either hotter or change into a completely unfamiliar form entirely. Perhaps it would be the very next second. Perhaps it would be 10,000 years from now. But it didn't matter. They had all already received an outcome beyond their wildest hopes. Leaning against the car, he smiled at Lu Feng. Lu Feng leaned down and kissed him on the corner of one eye, then turned to the other side and began calibrating the compass and navigator. While he was fidgeting with the compass and navigator, Anji continued flipping through his own documents. He had already gone through nearly all of it earlier, so before the 5 minutes had passed, he completely finished reading everything that was left. With a click, he pressed the lock screen button. At this point, Lu Feng had also finished what he was doing. They started from the south. In front were lakes, to the east were jungles, and to the west were bogs. "Where to?" Lu Feng asked. "I don't know." Anji's attitude was somewhat negative. "Let's go east," Lu Feng said. "Why?" "I don't know where your cave is," Lu Feng said, putting aside the navigator. "But I do know where I met you for the first time." It was better when he hadn't said that. Once he did, Anji's mood completely soured. He looked up at Lu Feng, his eyebrows slightly furrowed, the rims of his eyes red, about to start crying. Showing a rare baffled expression, Lu Feng cupped Anji's face. "What is it?" "You don't like me at all," Anji said, frowning. Lu Feng said, "I do like you." Anji raised his voice. "Then what about my spore?" Lu Feng didn't mention the matter of the spore to him at all. Anji was so fierce in the past, he didn't dare to ask of his own accord. Could only search everywhere for news, wishing to know where the inert sample had gone. But it wasn't anywhere. It wasn't until he searched to the very end he saw something about inert extract from scraps of the news along with a photo showing a snow-white spore the size of only a jujube pit inside of a glass bottle. Now Lu Feng didn't mention it, and traces of the spore were even scarcer. There was only one possibility, which was that it had been killed. Upon hearing those words, a hint of a smile appeared in Lu Feng's eyes instead. Anji was so angered that he could not speak coherently. It got smaller and smaller in your care. His vision misted over, and he was on the verge of crying. Killed it. Lu Feng said, I didn't. You did! Anji grabbed his arm, a lump in his throat. You weren't good to it at all. Give it back to me. It still exists. Don't cry, Lu Feng said. What is the spore to you? It's... Anji strove to describe it in human language, but he couldn't. He could only say, it's just my spore. Is it very important? Yes, it is. She was almost shaking with anger. I can die, but I must plant my spore. I only gave it to you because I thought you would raise it properly. Is it even more important than your life? Mm-hmm. To any creature, its own life is the most important. The spore is the most important, Anji unrelentingly argued. It's not like you're a mushroom. You wouldn't understand. Okay. Lu Feng's voice still contained a very gentle smile. So it's your child? Anji bit his lip. A mushroom's world had no parents or children, no kinsfolk, not even friends. Every single type of mushroom in the abyss was different from the other mushrooms. He had no way of using human relationships to describe the relationship between himself and his spore. Sorry about that. Unable to say that it was his child, he could only say, I gave birth to it. I raised it. You didn't raise it properly at all. Lu Feng said. Then why is it that at the lighthouse, even though it saw you too, it only floated to my side of its own accord? Anji had just been brooding over Lu Feng killing the spore, but now that the past was brought up again, he instantly recalled how the spore acted so traitorously. Both of them were no good. Unsure of what to say, he could only reply, but I gave birth to it. Lu Feng smiled again. The world spun. Anji was pressed firmly against the car. Lu Feng's fingers skated over his abdomen, and in the weakest and softest place, the cool fingertips sparked a shudder. Anji softly gasped for breath. Lu Feng lowered his head and gently spoke into his ear. Let me see you give birth to another one. And that is the end of Epilogue 1. Oh, goodness. Hang on. Tea break. I wonder if it looks like this next chapter is a continuation. Wonder if it's going to get spicy. Because I legit don't know. This is also my first time reading this, so. Whew. Potential 17 plus warning. Because I know in the extras sometimes it gets spicy, so. I'm going to say that now. Potential spice coming. Epilogue 2. One day. Anji looked up at Lu Feng with a frown. He was unhappy. The rims of his eyes reddened, and he did not speak to Lu Feng. Grabbing Lu Feng's wrist, he forcefully tried to move it aside. But the man was far stronger than him, so Anji couldn't pull it away at all. After trying a few times, he simply turned his fingers into hype and wrapped them around Lu Feng's wrist, pulling it outward. But the strength of his soft hype was even less than that of his human form, breaking with even a bit of force. Don't pull, Lu Feng said into his ear, his voice low. Anji ignored him. Lu Feng laughed softly, then parted the snow-white layers of hype with a feather-light touch, and once again laid his fingers on the skin of Anji's abdomen. Do you have any more? He asked. I don't, Anji's tone was hostile. He already had his spore dug out once by this man, so how could there possibly be a second time? Furthermore, he truly did not have any spores now. The strange thing was, although the original spore had clearly been lost and there was no new spore in his body, that feeling of something being missing had also left him. The hole in his body that could never be filled was gone, and his mind was no longer constantly preoccupied with this missing spore, just like a long time ago when he had just been born. When he woke up, he could not have been any more whole. Anji looked down at his Hype, his snow-white, soft, dexterous, and well-defined Hype. Slightly stunned, he put his other hand to his abdomen and touched them. Then Lu Feng held that hand as well. He could not help but think of his time at the research institute. He would shut himself up in a deserted room and carefully change part of his limbs back to Hype, and what would be revealed after the human skin and bones disappeared was a tangled gray-black mist. Mass. Not mist. Mass. The original Hype had shriveled and liquefied. Before long, his entire body would turn into a puddle of black liquid and dry up on the floor or in a corner. This was how a mushroom died. Every time he got to that point, he would turn them back into human form as though he had received an electric shock, then look out the window at the endless night sky and at the deep night time of his own life. The tremendous fear that every creature felt when directly facing death shrouded him as well. He would feel the bone-deep chill of it, tremble, close his eyes, and wait for everything to slowly dissipate before walking back out to live with the people of the research institute like a normal human. Of these things, Lu Feng knew nothing. For some reason, this knowledge made the rims of his eyes sting. Recalling the fear and despair from that time, he once again looked up at Lu Feng, his heart suffused with a feeling of hurt even stronger than before. Lu Feng clearly understood his expression. "You're crying for real?" The hand that the colonel had held his shoulder with moved up, touching the corner of his eye. "What's the matter?" Anji shook his head. "In any case, I'm not giving it to you." With that, he struggled to escape Lu Feng's grip, but he was restrained in another way, and the two of them toppled over onto the grass. He found himself pinned down beneath Lu Feng. And this guy likes cabedons, doesn't he? Pinning him, all that. The thin, soft, mid-February grass rose past him. Springtime came to the abyss extraordinarily early this year. Anji turned his head and looked to the side. A plump, pure white mushroom had just unfurled its cap. Its gills were not yet fully open, but presumably it would not be long before thousands of spores would fall from the cap and diffuse outward like fog. Other mushrooms had many spores, but he only had one, and it was gone to boot. He bit his lip. He heard Lu Feng say, "Don't be afraid." He said nothing, and Lu Feng continued, "I don't want the spore." "Then what about my spore?" Anji asked. "You wish to know?" "I do." Lu Feng scooped up a few strands of Hype. "Other mushrooms all have many spores," he said. "Why did you only have one?" "I don't know," Anji said. "When did you know that you were a mushroom?" Lu Feng asked. Anji thought hard, then said, "Since a long time ago." "Was there a catalyst?" "It was raining." "What else?" "I snapped in half, but I didn't want to die yet." "Did it hurt?" Anji shook his head. Lu Feng asked, "Is there anything else?" Anji could only think of one thing. "It was raining," he repeated. Lu Feng seemed to think for a while. Then he asked, "You can fuse with many creatures. Are you able to distinguish exactly how many you fused with, no matter if it was active or passive?" Anji shook his head. He indeed had come into contact with many creatures, either actively or passively, but he did not know if he had obtained their genes. The sole time was when he completely absorbed all of the blood and tissue from Anzi's body, unconsciously obtaining the ability to turn into a human. He heard Lu Feng ask, "Have you seen snakes before?" Anji nodded, for he had certainly seen snakes before. Snakes shed their skin. The original skin is discarded, and it crawls out from there, Lu Feng said. Many creatures can do the same. For a while, Anji did not know what Lu Feng wished to express, so he merely listened. But Mr. Polly said that this is still very different from your form of life. Some single-celled eukaryotes have an additional trait, Lu Feng said. I tried my best with that one. I might be saying it wrong. It looks like eukaryotes. When the environment is hostile, it will stop growing, and the main part of its body will form a sporocyte and fall into a deep sleep, only to come back to life in a suitable environment. Anji frowned. He seemed to understand what Lu Feng was saying, yet he also seemed to still be unable to accurately express it. Furthermore, you are a fungus. Although you aren't the same species as them, you're all living things with simple components. Feeling that what Lu Feng was saying was not flattering, Anji pushed the man away. Lu Feng did not move. He only looked at Anji, a hint of a smile in his eyes. It still hasn't occurred to you? Anji looked at the Hype as he asked in a small voice, Are you saying that my spore grew into me? Strangely, after saying it, he did not feel surprised at all. Perhaps he simply said something ordinary. He became lost in thought as he contemplated the whole thing. Polly said that when you cast off your fundamental form as a mushroom, you also obtain new properties. Perhaps you fused with the properties of other simple creatures, obtaining a new form of life. As an existence similar to sporocytes, the spore became a spare life to be used after your body decayed. Therefore, you viewed it as more important than your own life because it truly was your life. Through this method, you may have achieved immortality, Lu Feng said. That's kind of cool. I mean, I never want to be immortal. It would be awful. Everyone around you dies, and you just keep going. Like, no thanks. Anji's eyes widened slightly. That's just me personally. Like, if you think it's great, power to you. Just one life's enough for me. The world's already on fire. I don't need to see more of it. Thank you. Okay, Anji's eyes widened slightly. Also, Lu Feng said, the first time I met Polly, he was suffering greatly. At the time, the spore landed on Polly of its own accord. I figured that only you would know him. Anji nodded, for he indeed have a vague recollection of approaching the grieving Polly. Similarly, he also had many memories of approaching Lu Feng. It was simply that he was not aware of what he was doing at the time. He perceived his intact body. I'm sorry, he mumbled to Lu Feng. If this were indeed the case, then he truly was wrong about Lu Feng. He had assumed the worst of this man. Lu Feng truly had not gone against the wish he had left behind and raised the spore to adulthood. It's okay. Lu Feng leaned closer to him. Within those perpetually indifferent cold green eyes, indescribable waves seemed to surge. He lowered his voice, saying, You're alive. Indeed, he was alive. He was still alive. Golden sunlight shone down on the verdant grass, and sparkling dust gently floated on the breeze. It was like a dream. Anji hang on. Anji lightly grabbed the edge of Lu Feng's sleeve. Then he thought of something else. The thing he had held a grudge over for a long time already. On that long ago day, he had opened the laboratory door and seen the spore. He had assumed the spore belonged to him and would float in his direction, but it had floated to where Lu Feng was. He said it. Lu Feng murmured, "It was you wishing to be by my side." Anji slowly lowered his gaze. "I didn't know," he said. At that time, he and Lu Feng did not exactly have a good relationship. At that thought, he then wondered if the relationship between himself and Lu Feng could now be considered good. Dude had you up against a truck when usually he is completely emotionless. I think he likes you. At that thought, he then wondered if the relationship between himself and Lu Feng could now be considered good. He gradually tightened his grip on Lu Feng's sleeve, but these uniformed and chaotic thoughts vanished like mist the moment he looked up and met Lu Feng's eyes. Today was February 14th. Oh, Valentine's Day. Nice. On this day, 4 years ago, he and Lu Feng met in the wilderness of the abyss. Are you telling me they seriously met on Valentine's Day? Like, what fairy tale bullshit is this? Like, come on. Oh, goodness. Later, they spent a brief amount of time together. Then he slept for 3 years, and Lu Feng raised the spore for 3 years. They might not have known each other for too long, nor did they have much experience interacting with each other. So compared to the relationships between other people, theirs really did not count for much. However, for the two of them, for a xenogenic and an arbiter, there was nobody else who could be like the other party. In the wind, he and Lu Feng silently locked eyes. After a long time, he heard Lu Feng murmur, "Thank you." He asked, "For what?" "A lot of things." Lu Feng's tone of voice was neutral, but his eyes never left Anji. He reached up and gently rested his hand on the side of Anji's face, his voice slightly raspy as he said, "Mostly for waiting for me all night on Judgment Day." Anji smiled, clearly very happy, but then he felt a little bitter. With his voice also slightly raspy, he said, "Then I also thank you for always sparing me." The colonel's pale, thin lips curled up, and then he lowered his head to kiss the corners of Anji's eyes, every touch fleeting. In his cold green eyes was Anji's reflection. Anji suddenly felt that this color was very gentle. Lu Feng looked at him in that manner, and Anji was pressed into the grass. He initially felt that this man's gaze was very gentle, but then a feeling of danger slowly arose, as though he were being watched from the jungle by some man-eating beast that was ready to pounce. Oh yeah, man-eating beast, huh? I think he prefers mushrooms. Would he be considered a vegetarian at that point? Sorry, that was a bad joke. When Lu Feng leaned down, dropping all his weight on Anji and buried his head in Anji's neck, the feeling reached its peak. They were so close, there wasn't the slightest gap, pressed directly against each other. Lu Feng's breathing and heartbeat were right in his ear and on his body. Anji hesitantly put his arms around Lu Feng's shoulders and used his limited knowledge to analyze the current situation. He then asked in a small voice, "Do you wish to bed me?" He heard Lu Feng let out a soft laugh, the sound slightly hoarse and breathy. Then Lu Feng asked, "Who taught you that?" "Mr. Shaw said it once," Anji replied. "Shaw Scott." Lu Feng accurately pronounced Mr. Shaw's name. "What else did he say?" Anji said, "It was more or less the same." In short, Mr. Shaw's language always revolved around these words. Lu Feng asked. If I did, what would you think? Anji thought hard. That, he said, that Mr. Shaw truly was incredible. He used to think that Mr. Shaw's words were completely unfounded, but now it appeared that they were correct about even the arbiter himself. He truthfully shared his thoughts with Lu Feng. Buried in his neck, Lu Feng began to laugh. It unexpectedly sounded like he was quite happy. After he finished laughing, he rolled over and lay side by side with Anji on the grass. Anji turned to look at him and saw that this man was indeed relaxed. He had never dared to dream that this arbiter who lived in constant night would wear such an expression. Lu Feng asked, Who else wished to bed you? Hosen, I suppose, when I came to the base in their vehicle. Ji thought back as he spoke. I think there was Josh as well, and on the third floor there were some mercenaries. What about you? I didn't like them much. Ji thought about their gazes. He saw that Lu Feng was looking at him as well, the cold arches of his eyebrows relaxing. It was a clear expression, similar to the mountain breeze currently blowing through the wilderness. Anji became a bit lost in thought. If time repeated itself, if Lu Feng were not the arbiter, if he were an invisible, ambitious, and powerful young military officer, perhaps his expression would have often been like this. Then, Lu Feng said, I'm different from them. Anji questioned him with a puzzled gaze. The colonel only smiled. It was a very good-looking one, like the seasoned snowpack in the initial stages of thaw. Let's go. Got up from the grass. Facing the morning sunlight, he held out a hand to Anji. I'll take you to search for Anzi. Anji also held out his hand, got pulled upright, and then followed. What's different? He asked. Everything's different. Anji looked at him with suspicion. Really? He asked. This time, the colonel did not reply. All right. That is Epilogue 2. So you know what that means. It's tea break time. Okay. They're really cute in the epilogue. Like, they've had their misery, they've had their pain, and we get some sugar sweet coming back in. All right. Next part. Epilogue. Roses. Just like me. Rosebud Reads. Oh, did I actually say that today? Hi, I'm Rosebud Reads. Welcome! Oops. Alright, Epilogue. Roses. First rose. Year 2103. We have no other alternatives. Everything in the world is devouring humankind, and our numbers are decreasing day by day. Oh, this might be like the Rose Pledge. The women in Eden made initially. Maybe that's this? Child, Madame Lu removed the golden rose badge from her chest, placing it in the palm of her hand, then slowly curled her fingers around it so she could feel the soft raised lines of the petals, as if she were touching a real rose. Okay, no, so this might actually be about the literal roses from her rose garden. Alright. Everyone must take up the weapons that they can, so they may confront this age. Everyone. Her voice was gentle, like a ripple of water. But you won't receive anything, Mom. No single individual besides me will benefit either. It is the entirety of humankind that will benefit. It is only when the entirety of humankind gradually escapes this awful plight that we as individuals will see improvement. although it may be hundreds of years into the future. But the truth is, it is only when you saved everyone that you yourself will be saved. But we cannot rule out the possibility that our salvation will come far later than everyone else's, she continued. This is what we take up that is when we take up weapons to protect ourselves. Will that day come, Mom? It will. Her voice was startlingly resolute. Unless we have all perished before we could be saved. But remember, child, no matter what, humans love each other. Child, do you love them? I do. She handed over the badge to her youngest daughter. Second Rose, year 2105. Okay, so 2 years. 2 years later. There was a loud thump. Something heavy landed on the ground, and the world spun. Her mother had used that object to hit her on the back of the neck, and she fell to the floor. Then came the sound of the bedroom door slamming shut. With a click, the door was locked. She should have fallen unconscious, but at the last second, a glimmering golden object fell from her coat pocket, and its color called back the remaining scrap of her consciousness. The ringing in her ears that was like the roar of airplanes amidst a terrible pain that seemed to split her head open, and a numbness that felt like she had lost all of her limbs. She reached out, gripped the golden rose badge, and hurriedly panted for breath. She would not allow herself to fall unconscious. Her temperament was mild, but her will was strong, far exceeding that of ordinary people, which was also something her mother acknowledged. And her mother was a distinguished and outstanding woman. Auntie Lin Shan had said, "Your mother has shown an extraordinary gift for leadership ever since she was a young girl. Was even the initiator of the Rose Manifesto, one of the drafters of the birth law which saved humankind from disaster. Until now, when the impression that women were suffering became heavier and heavier, exceeding the agreed-upon upper limit, she and her compatriots took up weapons and defended the freedom and dignity, just as they were supposed to. It seemed as though a long time passed. Half an hour, 1 hour, or even perhaps 2 hours. Through the bedroom door, she heard rough knocks come from the nearby entryway. Then came the rhythmic tapping of high heels. That was her mother, Madame Lu. There was not a single person who did not know that Madame Lu had been self-possessed and elegant all her life. When she was not with child, she always wore a long crimson dress, girded at the waist with modest black high heels. She carried herself with a grace that did not change with the passage of time. The door opened and the visitors entered. Their footsteps were very heavy, as those were the sounds of military boots striking the floor. She felt a sense of danger, but of late these sorts of things happened often. Then came the sound of endless chatter, which seemed to have been deliberately lowered. She vaguely heard a few words like modify, cease, and centralize. Her mother had often conversed with some people over the last 3 months, and although she avoided her daughter, the keywords she had unintentionally heard were the same. She knew more or less what had happened. For the past half a year, the anti-oppressionist Roses poster could be seen everywhere, and the base had attempted to reach a compromise with them. "I do not agree," her mother said in a raised voice. "I'm afraid you need to come with us. We have already come with you many times. It's different this time, madam." "Are there others?" "Only you, madam. The Marshal wishes to personally negotiate with you. You may also choose to bring others. I demand that Lieutenant General Lin Shan and her armed escort come along." "Of course, madam," the officer said after a short silence. It seemed as though the officer dialed the number while her mother walked over to the filing cabinet near the bedroom door. The officer hung up. A long while later, Madame Lu said, "I'll prepare the materials. When Lieutenant General Lin Shan arrives, I will go." Then came the sounds of the file cabinet opening. Everyone in the living room was very quiet. A long time passed, so long that she nearly lost consciousness. But she was still thinking. Why would her own mother knock her out? Why? Why? Because. She continued thinking such thoughts until she was right on the cusp of losing consciousness, until a gunshot rang out. She trembled all over. Her hands dripped with cold sweat, and the golden bangle slipped from her hand. In the very next moment, it was going to hit the floor and make a clear sound. And her unsteady beliefs would be just like this badge. In this difficult-to-measure span of time, she strenuously gathered her fingers together, securely clenching the badge in her palm once more, and put her fist to her chest. After a long while, blood slowly trickled through the gap beneath the door like an octopus's tentacle. She turned her gaze away from it and quietly looked at the comfortable room. Whether her gaze contained sorrow, hatred, pity, or perhaps nothing at all was a mystery. In the following moment, she completely lost consciousness. All right, and then it's third rose, year 2105, so 2105, so that is, wait, wasn't it 2105 before? Yes, same year, third rose. She was brought to a place where she stayed in a few small rooms along with some other girls of a similar age. Every day, people would deliver food and water to them. She knew that many things happened outside, lasting for at least 3 months, because her new lifestyle lasted for 3 months. She kept thinking, if her mother had not known that danger was coming, why did she knock her out that far in advance? If she had known that danger was coming, why had she not taken precautions before it was too late? If shooting Madame Lu could have solved the problem, why did the chaos last for 3 months? If it was predicted that it would lead to 3 months of chaos, why did they choose to kill her? Sometimes she suspected that her mother had intentionally allowed herself to be killed, and knocking out her daughter was to allow her to live. Her mother had even said that apart from the women closely connected to the manifesto, the other members of the base were indifferent to the opposition activities. Of course, there existed a way to make them care, which was to make them see how massive the thing oppressing the women was, and there would eventually come a day when it crushed everyone. Or perhaps she would never know the truth of that time. No matter what had happened, her mother, Madame Lu, and Madame Lu's companions had been defeated. Because she and her companions had been brought to the entrance of a massive, silvery white hexagonal building. This building, which she could see every day as soon as she pulled open the curtains, was called the Garden of Eden. In the main hall was an older woman she did not know, pulling her along by the hand. "Child," the madam asked, "do you love humankind?" "No matter what," the girl said softly, looking into her eyes. "Humans love each other." She walked in, and she knew that many years later she would be called Madame Lu as well, as if her mother still lived. Fourth rose, present. It was a deep green monster. Anji crouched down and examined it. It was nearly dead. In its abdomen were 3 bloody holes, each the size of a bowl's rim, from which thick black liquid was flowing. Its skin, which consisted of fine scales along with protruding spines and lumps, feebly rose and fell. 4 of its 5 eyes were compound eyes, and they were shrouded over with an ominous layer of white. The 5th eye was tightly shut, and the dozen or so fist-sized compound eyes on the backside were dimmed. In the abyss, it was rare to see mortally wounded monsters like this one. This meant that it had just eked out victory in a struggle, and that the aroma of its blood had not yet been noticed by other hunters. It was not large, about the length of a newborn human baby. Of course, that did not mean it had always been that length, because the polymorphic class monsters of the abyss could freely change between many forms and sizes. Polly had said that this would be inconceivable under the previous theoretical framework, because some substances would vanish into thin air and other substances would appear out of thin air. But if it was explained using waves and frequencies, the changing of forms was merely an alteration in frequency, which was easy to achieve and understand. Now, the reason why it looked like this on its deathbed may have been because it wished to die in this form. Perhaps it was its original form, or perhaps it was its favorite form. Anji gently touched its head with his hype, but there was no reaction whatsoever. It's almost dead. He frowned slightly as he looked at the monster. Next to him, Lu Feng only said, "It's raining." Anji tilted his head back and saw that dark clouds had gathered overhead. With a plop, a raindrop fell between the layered branches and leaves of the trees and vines and splattered onto the ground. In the following second, yet another drop landed on the monster's wound. It spasmed, seemingly feeling pain from it. The summer rain came so swiftly that in just a few seconds, white raindrops came pelting down thick and fast, sounding like drum beats as they struck the leaves, not sunk. Lu Feng covered Anji's shoulders and head with his uniform coat. Anji said, "When we came, there seemed to be a cave nearby." He grabbed Lu Feng's hand and stood up, then hesitated for a few seconds. In the end, though, he picked up the small and trembling monster, and the two of them walked towards the nearby mountains. "The shape isn't quite right," Lu Feng said. But Anji did not feel anything in particular, for the abyss had never been short of strangely shaped landforms. The cave mouth was right there, a quiet opening between tangled vines. The monster in Anji's arms was still trembling. Many years ago he had dragged the severely wounded Anzi back to his cave in a similar manner. Although he knew in his heart that the cave before him was definitely not the cave from back then, he had the strange feeling that time and destiny were overlapping, and that he had traveled the path from back then once more. However, when he stood at the so-called cave entrance, he finally believed Lu Feng's assessment. The cave mouth was not the commonly seen irregular opening, but an approximation of an arch. It was an abandoned building, squeezed by the raised ground into its current appearance. Within the abyss, there really were some of humankind's ruined cities scattered around. The sites had various buildings with different functions. In the span of 100 years, the creatures of the abyss grew upon and infested them. Once inside, the surroundings were pitch black with the occasional fluorescent glow from plants. Anji put the monster down and placed the flashlight in an appropriate spot. The flashlight lit up a limited area. This place was a spacious hall, its furnishings long since decayed. It seemed to be a church. The walls were molded with signs that monsters lived within, but they seemed to be from a very long time ago. There was a sound of carapace scraping against stone as the dying monster moved 5 centimeters toward them. Anji reached out and touched the fluff on its limbs, and the monster's head turned. Unlike mammals, insects' eyes lacked pupils, so it was difficult to make out what their vision was focusing on. But Anji knew that it was looking at him. Why was it looking at him? What was it thinking? What kind of feelings would a five-eyed monster have when it was on its deathbed? Anji did not know. Strands of white hype climbed up the monster's body and gently covered its deepest wound. Its limbs twitched as though the monster wanted to come to Anji, but in the following moment, all movement ceased. It was about to die. Anji looked at it without retracting his hype. It felt like there were eyes on him. When he turned, he discovered that Lu Feng was leaning against one of the church's crumbling pillars with arms crossed and gaze cast in his direction. So he was observing Anji's every movement. "Did you do this often?" Lu Feng asked. "Sometimes," Anji replied. He knew what Lu Feng was asking. If he encountered a wounded creature in the abyss, he would drag it back. Occasionally, a seriously wounded creature would live due to recovering in the safe cave. Whew. Sorry. But the vast majority of the time, it would die. Been the same for Anzi. Lu Feng was still looking at him. At that time, did you already have a human consciousness? Anji thought back for a moment, then shook his head. He was just a mushroom at that time, and furthermore, he did not know how to describe a mushroom's living state in human language. He pursed his lips, then continued. If my hype broke, I would feel pain, and I was afraid of dying. So when I saw them about to die, I would think of ways to help. After a long time, he saw Lu Feng smile. That is something you would do. The coat had gotten wet from the rain, and this place was particularly dark and damp. Fortunately, the backpack they always carried around contained a few blocks of charcoal. They set up a stand, made a fire, and turned the flashlight off. Are you cold? Lu Feng asked Anji. Ji shook his head, but still moved closer to Lu Feng. Lu Feng draped an arm around his shoulder. Neither of them spoke. Anji leaned against Lu Feng's shoulder and watched the dancing flames. Will I be able to find Anzi? He asked after a long moment. He and Lu Feng had agreed to stay in the abyss for 1 month and at the base for 1 month. Lu Feng did not dislike the abyss. Anji even felt that the colonel preferred the abyss to the base. The colonel knew many aspects of the abyss like the back of his own hand. And this month he could also collect many samples for the research institute. But no matter how skilled Lu Feng was, or how much the scope was narrowed, the abyss was still very big. So long as that cave still exists, yes, Lu Feng said. Anji thought back on everything about the abyss. The cave entrance may have been covered up by mushrooms, flooded with water, or collapsed by large monsters fighting. Sometimes the caves themselves are alive. They wake up and then they leave. That's kind of crazy. He continued, but I still want to search. This is something I promised to Anzi, although he didn't know. Then let it be a promise I made to myself. He spoke to himself, while Lu Feng just repeatedly stroked his hair. In the end, he said to Anji, he won't be angry because you were late in finding him. Anji nodded. Anzi was a very good person. He cut off his fanciful thoughts, and while continuing to watch the flames, he slowly spoke of the abyss. Lu Feng simply listened. At some point, it suddenly occurred to Anji that he had already recounted the entirety of his life as a mushroom to Lu Feng. Lu Feng knew of the rainy season and the grass, as well as Anzi and Josh. He knew of all the people he knew, and he knew of all the things he encountered. On the other hand, he knew nothing about Lu Feng's past. Have you ever made a promise to someone that you couldn't keep? He asked. Anji already thought of his answer. He imagined that a person like Lu Feng would not lightly make promises or have unrealistic fantasies. But contrary to his expectations, after a brief silence, Lu Feng said, I have. The crackling of the firewood gradually softened. The hot flames turned into a red glow on the pitch-black charcoal. The surroundings dimmed, and the aroma of dust wafted over. The stairwell on the 22nd floor of the Garden of Eden had also been a dark and dusty place. When the day comes, a gentle female voice suddenly spoke into Lu Feng's ear. When the day comes that we are all freed comes, I will no longer need to meet my children in secret like this. Gibran was not Madame Lu's child, but he often came to the 22nd floor as well. As he sat on the railing of the emergency stairs, his little legs swinging, he said, Madam, you'll definitely be able to see this day. The madam patted his head. Our great scientist is here. Gibran tilted his head back and whistled. Lu Feng and I will see that day too. The madam's gaze moved away from Gibran and settled on Lu Feng. Do you also want to go to the lighthouse? Lu Feng shook his head. Then you're just like your father. The madam kissed his forehead. When you grow up, you must protect the base. Then the madam took one of his hands and one of Gibran's hands, put them together, and placed her own hand on top. We will see that day, and when that day comes, upon her young face was a quiet joy. When that day comes, we'll be together, along with your father. Promise me, you two. Promise me, you two. I promise, madam. I promise, too. Lu Feng's story was very short, but while Anji was watching him, his attention wandered. This time, it was Lu Feng who watched the dying fire. Anji reached out. He straightened up and attempted to hold Lu Feng in the same way that Lu Feng had held him earlier. The colonel, seeming to understand, adjusted his angle and moved closer to Anji. Anji put an arm around his shoulder, and although he was a bit unaccustomed to it, it wasn't bad. You once told me that she turned into a bee because of a rose from many years ago, Lu Feng said. Been constantly thinking about who it was that gave it to her. Anji was taken aback. On a day when the ultrasonic disperser had not yet been invented or when it had briefly stopped working, a bee that had mistakenly entered the city was enticed by the flower and stung Madame Lu on her finger. The bee's weak frequency concealed itself in her body, to be awakened one day in the future by the vast and unknown wave from the universe. Within this base, only Madame Lu had roses because she loved such things and other people loved her. Lu Feng's father, and later Lu Feng himself, would give her seeds that the lighthouse collected and confirmed to be safe. Only those two people. Anji gently held Lu Feng's hand. The pile of firewood burned out, and the dim red was receding as well. The wind echoed inside the church. It seemed to be another windy night. I hope you can go to the United Front Center, Madame Lu had said. That was the last time Lu Feng spoke with her before he officially joined the military. Back then, he was at a small field site on the one side of the base, a distance that the base's civilian communications could barely get through to. That place suits you the best. They also go into the wilderness the least often, so it's also the safest, she had said. In all my years serving the base, this is the only time I've been selfish. I want you to live. I hope that all of my children can live, but I only know you. Lu Feng said nothing. If it is someplace else, I won't stop you either, but don't go to the trial court. I'm afraid of that place, she murmured. Last year, there was even a shooting incident at the trial court. Many of the base's drastic changes begin from bloodshed, and the trial court seeks blood like water every day. There is too much suffering there. Were you listening? She asked after a stretch of silence. I was, he replied. She smiled. Then promise me. You must promise. The rustle of static suddenly started up. Bzzz. It was immediately followed by soothing music, a relaxing frequency, and a gentle female voice. I'm sorry, but due to the effects of the solar wind or the ionosphere, the base's signal has been interrupted. This is normal. Please refrain from panicking and carry out all activities as usual. The communication signal will recover at some point. At that time, the public broadcast will be sent to you, so please stay tuned. Please stay tuned. When all the wood burned into loose, pale debris that would fall apart with just a touch, the church fell into darkness and lonely quietude. Right at that moment, however, countless faint green lights lit up, for the insect monster they picked up had died. Anji looked over. Its body gradually fell apart and dissipated into a scattering of tiny green lights resembling a cloud of glowing green smoke or a swarm of fireflies. The lights first enveloped them, dreamlike, then rose and illuminated the entire derelict church, along with the molded painting of the Virgin Mary on the left wall, the massive painting of the crucifixion of Jesus in front. Withered vines hung on the Virgin Mary's shoulders, and her cheeks were scored by animal claws, while Jesus' body was covered with mold. Only their eyes were clear. From behind the vines, mold and dust, they silently observed the mortal world. The stream of lights dissipated. Destiny dispersed in the mortal world. Okay. We have reached Epilogue Summer, but I need to blow my nose and take a short tea break. Are you guys liking it so far? Like, it's different kind of extras to what we're used to getting from these kinds of books, I feel like. I know usually it's like spicy time. I'm kind of enjoying that it's a bit more relationship building because like it's been a lot of world building or one point of view, and now we get to see some of the actual like stories. So I think that's pretty cool. Oh, my candle went out. Okay. Just stretch for a second. Ooh. Okay. Next epilogue. Epilogue Summer. Summer had come to the abyss. Below the Highland Research Institute, a deep green that covered everything rose and fell like a mighty ocean connected to the pale blue sky. In the distant mountains, a flock of black-winged monsters circled, letting out long, warbling cries. Their cries and the wind were delivered together to the mountain peak. Above the corridor, the foliage and clustered flowers of the vines swayed, and snow-white petals drifted down to land on Anji. He raised a hand to catch one, holding it in his left hand, and fiddled with the tip of a vine with his other hand. Lu Feng reached out to remove the petals on his shirt collar and hair. Feeling the man's movements, Anji turned back and pulled the vine over to Lu Feng. Look. He had just discovered a new snow-white bud on this vine. Of course, whether this was new buds on this vine or whether the buds were big or small or black or white would not pique Colonel Lou's interest. The colonel expressionlessly leaned down and kissed him on the forehead. Across from them, Dr. G let out a sound akin to admiration. He is alive. Oh, I'm so glad. He leaned against the windowsill, left hand shaking a Regent bottle and right hand hanging at his side. In the last battle to defend the northern base, Dr. G had lost his entire right arm and the lower part of his right leg. He had carried out the conversation with the Highland Research Institute in the midst of such terrible agony. As for why he survived instead of dying from excess blood loss, could only be attributed to the mercy of God. I'm so glad he's still alive. Like, he was so sassy. He later applied to transfer to the Highland Research Institute. His brain had been unaffected, but in this age without artificial limbs, a right arm and half a leg were more than sufficient to put an end to the scientist's life. He had not come to continue his own research, but rather because of his admiration for Polly Jones and his willingness to contribute his own body for new research. With the help of dozens of experimental volunteers who were similar to him, the Research Institute determined 6 safe frequencies that could be propagated, amongst which was a creature that had the ability to regenerate limbs. In short, Dr. G was now like any other regular person, although he had still not yet accustomed to his new limbs. It's a lot of research in just 3 years. In short, Dr. G was now... Okay. Anji turned to look at Dr. G, wishing to see what he was clicking his tongue about this time. Dr. G looked at Lu Feng. At the same time, he lifted his hands and sharply clapped twice. You've been seen by me, Colonel Lu, he said. If I hadn't seen it, I would have truly thought that you were planning to forever be an honorable gentleman, a qualified father. Oh, you seem to be too young, so you can be a competent older brother instead. Lu Feng plucked the last petal from Anji's neck, then gave a flat look at Dr. G. Gibran, he said, his tone of voice straightforward. I've overestimated your personality. Okay. Dr. G raised both hands in surrender. I was wrong. I underestimated the mighty arbiter's moral standards. Lu Feng said nothing. It was my mistake, I admit it. It's not that your personality is too respectable, it's that my moral standards are indeed rather low. Dr. G continued, begging for mercy. As soon as he shifted his gaze, he saw Anji, who was looking at him while holding on to Lu Feng's wrist. Supposing I was given such a little darling, he grinned, held out a hand and made a gesture. I'd tie him to the bed and then... Lu Feng shot him a cold look. And then dissect him. Dr. G shut up after he had finished his sentence. There's something wrong with Dr. G's brain, Lu Feng said to Anji, his head lowered. You can consider using your hype to treat him. There's absolutely no need. Nearby, Dr. G went pale with fright. I'll just leave. The suggestion of Lu Feng's to plot Dr. G's murder failed to pique Anji's interest. G stood on tiptoe and planted a kiss on the side of Lu Feng's face. Once again, Dr. G said, Tisk. Lu Feng said, You can go now. Is this how you're going to treat your best friend, Colonel Lu? Dr. G asked. Yes. What? I don't even have the qualification to watch you two play house? Within Dr. G's voice was a trace of heartbreak. No. The term play house piqued Anji's interest, so he once again lifted his head to look at Dr. G. So cute. Dr. G looked at him as well, an odd light flashing in his eyes. He'd cry for a long time after being dissected, wouldn't he? Anji always had the feeling that Dr. G had been possessed by something. Perhaps he was fused with Mr. Shaw. Dr. G crossed his arms and let out a sigh before shifting his attention back to his light blue Regent bottle. Colonel Lu, you really won't try it, he said. Extract number 1014 doesn't have any side effects. Combination with a minor frequency adjustment of the magnetic poles after 3 subjects were infected. One of them had perfect night vision. This is something that you yourself brought back from the abyss a month ago. Sunlight shone in from the gaps between the vine leaves and onto the slender glass tube, the reagent sparkling within. Reagent. Sorry, not regent. He's not a king. My bad. Reagent sparkling within. Lu Feng merely glanced at it. Beneath the doctor's expectant gaze, Anji answered in Lu Feng's stead. He doesn't want it. Dr. G turned and left with his reagent, fiddling with his communicator. Polly is calling me. Goodbye. Anji said, Goodbye, doctor. Lu Feng truly did not want it, Anji knew. Moreover, Colonel Lu did not need to obtain those strange enhancements or abilities at all, for he already came and went freely from the abyss. While Anji was lost in fanciful thoughts, he latched onto the nearby lush vine with his hype. He'd been eyeing it for a long time. Don't eat things willy-nilly, Lu Feng spotted his movements. This can be digested, Anji argued. He extended a strand of hype to show Lu Feng. The hype, I guess singular hype is hypa, climbed up to the cuff of the colonel's black uniform sleeve and formed on the silver sleeve buttons a verdant new leaf that gently trembled in the wind. This was Anji's recent amusement. Ever since he discovered he could safely fuse with all living and non-living things, he tried many of them, apart from the ugly ones. He does like his pretty things. On one relatively successful occasion, he turned himself into a room full of drifting willow catkins and nearly choked the colonel. Oops. But fusion was not always safe either. Just as Lu Feng said a long time ago, polymorphic class monsters would sometimes make mistakes when changing form. Not long ago, when he was drinking potato soup out of his love for this plant, he went to the laboratory and fused with a small piece of potato, then unexpectedly fell unconscious and woke up only after 3 hours had gone by. Polly had said, This is because your frequency as a mushroom and the potato's frequency are too different, so rejection occurs. It was the same when fusing with other things. Although the results were always positive, the process was full of uncertainty. Just like how a piece of sodium would dissolve in water, but the process would produce an explosion. From then on, Lu Feng prohibited him from eating things willy-nilly. But Anji wished to eat the small piece of vine. This action would not cause any harm to the vine's life, and furthermore, the vine had no abnormalities. It was just a quiet and beautifully blooming vine. Anji gently scraped a small opening in its skin, and juice seeped out. It was very quiet. As the pale green juice saturated the hype, a wind from the abyss blew through the cold sky, stirring the vine that was attached to the research institute. The sun, moon, stars... Oh, there's a bug. That was weird. All right. The sun, moon, stars... Everything in the sky shone upon it. Anji closed his eyes. It seemed like his body was likewise relaxing. Lu Feng was right to his side, so he did not need to worry about anything else. Allowing Lu Feng to half hold him, he sat down on the bench in the dark green corridor. Perhaps his condition was normal and the vine was also normal. Lu Feng had not allowed him to eat this vine, but he did not stop him either. That was an implied acceptance. He lay in Lu Feng's arms, grabbing his hand, his thoughts very disorganized. It was like he was soaking in warm water. It's been growing here for many years, and it was originally a vine that wouldn't flower, he said. Later, some winged animals brought pollen over, so then it had white flowers. It thinks they're very pretty, and it's very happy. That's right, when he digests things, he gets, like, memories or impressions. That's kind of sweet. The vine's very happy that it looks pretty. As he softly rambled about the feelings he experienced from the vine and its memories, he reached up to hold Lu Feng by the shoulder and burrowed deeper into his embrace. He rubbed his head against Lu Feng's neck, then pressed his cheek against the slightly cool silver tassels on the other man's chest, feeling very comfortable. Lu Feng hummed to indicate that he was listening. A vine's feelings and memories were very simple things, but there were also some things that couldn't be described in human language. Anji scraped together a few words. It also wishes to have blue flowers. Then it also hopes that birds or butterflies and bees will come again and pollinate its flowers. After pollination, it can bear fruit. Then there was nothing else to talk about. Lu Feng ruffled Anji's hair. Just then, Lu Feng's communicator lit up, and he picked it up. Anji also looked at the communicator screen, which showed a message from the already departed doctor. You really won't consider extract number 1014? Your friend truly needs you very much. He needs a test subject. The doctor still hadn't given up peddling his extract. With a smile, Anji watched Lu Feng push a button and reply with one word. No. The doctor replied, Why is your attitude so cold? Isn't night vision good? You don't need it? Don't you want it? Every time you go to the abyss, I worry for your safety. It's only after you inject extract number 1014 that I can rest easy. He spoke as if it were actually true. Fang replied, Aren't infrared glasses easy to use? Then you can consider extract number 1015, pure black membrane wings with an average wingspan of 4.3 meters. You'll be able to fly, and it looks great. I sincerely hope you can experience the feeling of gliding through the air. Won't you consider it? Don't eat it, Lu Feng said. The speed at which the doctor replied was swift. Even through the screen, his resentment as he quickly typed could be felt. Times have changed, Mr. Arbiter. You must forget the doctrine of human lineage. Lay down the prejudices in your heart and embrace foreign genes. Lu Feng's reply was as simple and cold as before. Thank you. It's not right of you to be like this. Do you need psychological counseling? No. You're beyond saving. Doctor went so far as to send an exclamatory voice recording, followed by a text message. Just when will you be able to cure your obsession with clean bloodlines and morals? You once exiled yourself. Have you still not come back yet? I wish to splash you with extract. It's clear that the doctor was already irate. He was always like this after failing to peddle his extracts. With an expression that was as calm as always, Lu Feng replied, I'm very normal. Choose between 1014 and 1015 and I'll believe you. Lu Feng said nothing. See? You're beyond saving, the doctor said. Feng frowned slightly. After a long time, he tapped out a single word on the communication interface and sent it. Ugly. A brief silence. You really are something, the doctor said. Lu Feng loosened his grip, and Anji held the communicator, smiling as he read. He thought the doctor unexpectedly just learned it, whereas he had guessed it long ago. After the bell toll, many people voluntarily took in some frequencies that were certified to be safe. Some people grew wings, while others obtained the ability to photosynthesize. Of course, some people experienced harmless rejections. There were even a rare few who obtained nothing despite fusing. But Lu Feng refused such things. Of course, the reason was not at all like what the doctor said, with Lu Feng having an obsession with bloodlines and not allowing the makeup of his own species to be contaminated by other monsters. The true reason was very simple. Lu Feng felt that those monsters or xenogenics were all very ugly. Having him peacefully coexist with the humans at the research institute who had fused with other creatures' genes? Fine. Having him also try to grow some other things? Not a chance. He hated it. And she put the communicator aside and looked up at Lu Feng's face. His point of view was just right for seeing all the details. Lu Feng had an unforgettable face, but few would dare to look directly at him, and even fewer would carefully examine his features. Anji felt that his eyes were the most good-looking point about him, as distinctive as the crisp, biting wind at the top of the mountains in the abyss. He reached up to touch the colonel's thin eyebrows. When he was making the mannequin, there was a time when Mr. Shaw had repeatedly admired the blank mannequin's head that only had eyebrows and hair, clicking his tongue in admiration. Well done. Further down were long and narrow, deep green eyes, half covered by eyelashes, their appearance cold and lonely. Within those eyes, it was possible to dimly see one's own reflection. Anji thought that if a human looked like this, they indeed had the qualification to disdain other things for being ugly. He looked at the communicator again, and there was another message from the doctor. So what you mean is that I'm not good-looking either? The colonel did not reply. Dr. G just wants to fight. He turned back again to look at Lu Feng, burrowed even deeper into his arms. For some reason, he just wanted to do so right now, and he strangely felt a little lethargic. Lu Feng pulled him closer and asked, "What is it?" And she shook his head, having suddenly thought of a problem. He looked at Lu Feng, but said nothing. Anji was a mushroom who often slept early and woke up early, with eyes that were usually clear and bright, but now it was like they were fogged over with a layer of wetness. Feng lowered his head, getting a little closer. Anji said in a small voice, "I'm also a xenogenic." "Mm-hmm," Lu Feng said. "Little xenogenic." Anji asked, "Do you think mushrooms are also ugly?" "Not you. You're fine," Lu Feng said. "Color white is pretty." "Then what if I were a gray mushroom?" "Be all right." "What about a black mushroom?" "That's fine too." "What about a rainbow mushroom?" Feng looked at him expressionlessly. His voice was flat as he said, "I'd give you a white mushroom to eat." This man had a trait where his expression would look more serious the more he teased others. So Anji also expressionlessly said, "I'll eat you." With a soft laugh, Lu Feng scooped him up and changed their position so that they went from horizontal hold to facing each other. Anji flopped forward as though he were boneless and just happened to bump his forehead against Lu Feng's. It was unusual, for he normally did have bones, but right now he was feeling lazy down to the marrow of every single bone, so he did not draw back. The rubbing from Lu Feng's high nose bridge was a little ticklish, so he rubbed back, then buried his head in the hollow Lu Feng's shoulder. Lu Feng encircled him, and he unconsciously continued rubbing against Lu Feng. Seeming to smile, Lu Feng held him a little tighter. The communicator lit up and went out, then lit up again as Dr. G continued tirelessly sending scandalous messages. Lu Feng glanced at the doctor's irate words, thought of the conversation from earlier, and turned to Anji. He asked, "Are my moral standards very high?" Huh? For a while, Anji did not understand what he meant. After some thinking, he said, "You're a good person." Oh. Feeling that perhaps his answer was somewhat perfunctory, Anji added, "You're very good to us." Feng asked, "What about to you?" "To me?" Anji pondered it. "Sometimes you aren't very good." "Couldn't give your answer one more time," Lu Feng said. Anji stubbornly said nothing, which made Lu Feng laugh again. When he laughed, his chest vibrated a little, and they were so close that Anji could feel it. Lu Feng said nothing else. So Anji began to think. Of course, Lu Feng was good to him. Getting wounded while in the abyss was inevitable. Sometimes only a trickle of blood would ooze from his arm, but the way Lu Feng treated his wounds would make him feel like his arm had been broken with the amount of care he took to do so. If Anji wished to do something, he would not stop him. If Anji did not wish or agree to do something, he would not demand it of him either, although such a thing seldom happened. However, this man often bullied him over some small matters. Starting from the chaotic prison disaster, when they had just gotten to know each other, this man had revealed his true nature. Lu Feng was quite good to Dr. G as well, although it appeared that the two of them were exchanging cutting remarks every day. Then others... Of course, there was nothing to nitpick in the way Lu Feng treated them. Supposing the Research Institute encountered a calamity, no matter who shared a room with Lu Feng would inevitably make that person leave first while he himself faced the danger alone. If someone asked for help, Lu Feng would definitely not refuse them either. But that was all. If not for essential and work-related interactions, he would not communicate more than necessary with anyone other than Polly. In fact, the people of the Research Institute had very amicable relationships. Mutual banter and quarrels were both very common occurrences. There were many peaceful conversations and collaborations as well, but it was obvious that the mighty arbiter would not join in. Anji thought that the colonel had been protecting people from afar for too long, to the point where he had forgotten how to mingle with them, or perhaps he had never learned how to at all. He said, "You can also lower the expectations you have for yourself a little." How? Anji had no clue how he was supposed to do that, so he replied, "Think for yourself." Lu Feng said, "Okay." The timbre of his voice was also very chilly, seeming to contain a smile. It was a very youthful sound. Ji thought that he was a mushroom that had joined human society to a certain extent. In this place, he still had much to learn, but the same was true of Lu Feng. In that way, they were exactly the same. So he said, "For example, if you wish to be friends with the people of the Research Institute, you can eat with everyone and bring them fruit when you come back from outside." These sorts of methods may not be applicable to Lu Feng. He was only giving examples, and of course Lu Feng would understand. "I don't really wish to," Lu Feng said. "I have you to eat with and bring back fruit for. That's different." Feng's voice took on the slightest nasal sound it often had when he was teasing Anji. "What's different?" Anji did not really wish to talk to this man, so he bit Lu Feng's neck. It seemed to hurt, so he kissed the same spot to make up for it. Feng's voice contained a smile. "You're right." Anji felt that he and the colonel had been talking past each other from the beginning. He wished to sit up and knead Lu Feng's face. He wants to squish them cheeks. So he put his hands on Lu Feng's shoulder and moved back a little. Right at that moment, his body suddenly went limp for no reason, and he nearly failed to stabilize himself as he fell forward. Right onto Lu Feng. Lu Feng supported him. "What is it?" Anji shook his head, for he was unable to describe how he was feeling. Lu Feng touched his forehead, but he discovered nothing. Anji rested against his shoulder and took a hurried breath, unable to muster up any strength as he said, "I don't feel well." "Where are you not feeling well?" Anji just dazedly wrapped himself around Lu Feng. It was difficult for him to describe how he was currently feeling in human language. It was like receiving the season's call, waiting for something to happen. The last time he had this sort of premonition, it was the day his spore left him. But this time was different. Is he going into heat? Like, mushroom heat? Like, was he going to produce a new spore and begin another round of withering and rebirth? No, that wasn't right either. Right now, he only wished to be a little closer to Lu Feng. Lu Feng held his hand. The colonel's hand was very cold, but then Anji realized that Lu Feng's temperature was normal and that it was himself who was very warm. He rubbed against the hollow of Lu Feng's shoulder, shook his head, and closed his eyes, and some blurry images appeared before him. Wind. The summer wind blew from someplace south of the abyss. The jungle was a deep green sea, heaving and churning in the wind, and the vine's new leaves gently swayed as well. Summer was its flowering period. In the spaces between the leaves and branches, snow-white flowers grew like mushrooms, popping up from the soil after the rain, and petals filled the sky. Then came waiting. Waiting for what? Waiting for birds, waiting for butterflies? What would birds and butterflies do? He whimpered in discomfort. It was that vine's problem. He had just disregarded Lu Feng's warning and eaten the sap from one of this year's new vines before these strange symptoms presented themselves. It was like that time when he ate a piece of potato and passed out for 3 hours. Lu Feng tilted Anji's head up and gently patted his cheek. Anji? Anji was clear-headed, but he had lost control of his body. To clearly see his condition, Lu Feng lifted him up a little, which made him very uncomfortable. As Anji kept trying to lean against Lu Feng, he mumbled, "The vine." "What? Pain?" Anji hauled out over one of the soft vines dangling from the corridor at random. "The vine." Holding him, Lu Feng breathed a faint sigh of relief. Indeed, Anji did not look like he was in pain right now. He patted Anji's back, and Anji whimpered as he tried to burrow into Lu Feng's arms. Lu Feng glanced at the nearby cascade of flowering green vines. Behind the vines was the white building of the Research Institute. Fortunately, this place was not far from their living quarters. There was a faint aroma of flowers on the wind, something that had always been there. Now there was an additional cool fragrance that was faint to the point of being nearly imperceptible, like the scent of grass and small white flowers after the rain. So the fun fact, the smell after it starts raining, especially on hot cement, is called petrichor. There's your fun fact of the day. It was what mushrooms liked as they grew. After a few rainy seasons, it would become the scent of the mushrooms themselves. The mighty arbiter let out a rare, soft sigh. He held Anji by the shoulders, making him meet his eyes. Anji tightened his grip on the fabric of his sleeves and looked up at him, fine droplets clinging to his wet eyelashes. "You are a mushroom," Lu Feng said. "You can't eat things willy-nilly." Anji looked at the vine. There were no vines in the world more normal than this one, but he was still very uncomfortable. Only by being close to Lu Feng could he find relief, like how the vine's white flowers instead insisted on waiting for butterflies. With a frown, he returned Lu Feng's gaze. Lu Feng looked down at him as well. Then he was picked up. "Will you keep that in mind now?" Okay. Epilogue, which means tea break. I can hear myself getting nasally, so pardon the noise. It's kind of funny, though. I told you so. Like when kids put everything in their mouth when they're just babies. It's like, I swear I just took that rock or stick or branch or dirt or grass out of your mouth. Like, come on, buddy. Okay. All right. Epilogue. Heroes. Remember well, bravery, steadfastness, and self-sacrifice are the heroism in this age we are in, the heroism of humankind as a whole. In the Garden of Eden, Tong Lan was reciting a lesson. Hey, we found out where he's been. What collective and individual heroisms have in common are. Hubbard covered his face with an illustrated firearms manual. You still aren't done reciting? Just about. Tong Lan shut his book and looked up at the ceiling. Hubbard, what is it? Do you wish to be a hero? Hubbard pulled the manual down a little, revealing chestnut-colored eyes. He looked at the ceiling as well, and after 3 seconds he said, It doesn't matter to me. After 3 more seconds he asked, What about you? Tong Lan said, I don't know. Their dormitory teacher at the Garden of Eden was a short-haired woman. Oh, it's childhood. Never mind. Every boy wishes to be a hero. She put away their books, then added, Girls too. Hubbard looked at her, seemingly discontent on the illustrated manuals being put away, but then the dormitory teacher said, The assessment at the military base is the day after tomorrow. 2 must take in extra nutrients, so hurry and go eat dinner. Back then, the Garden of Eden supplies were still very abundant. It wasn't until children turned 10 years old that they were divided into A, B, and C ranks and then sent away. Undoubtedly, Hubbard and Tong Lan would be taken in by the military. After the Garden of Eden gave out detailed evaluation files, the Field Operations Department had its eyes on them well in advance. But just like all the unexpected accidents in human history, Tong Lan fell ill on the eve of the selection. It was an unknown bacterial infection or some other untraceable disease. Whether he could be cured, whether it was contagious, and how to deal with it were all unknown. As the final means of treatment, the lighthouse provided all the basic drugs it could and transferred him to a sealed-off room so he could heal himself in isolation. When the dormitory teacher told Hubbard the news, he was doing pull-ups in the training room in preparation for the military selection. He got down from the horizontal bar and wiped his face with a towel. The expression in his eyes was heavy, and no emotion could be seen. He'd always been cold and sparing with his words. The dormitory teacher anxiously looked at him. Can you pass on a message to him? Hubbard asked. Don't die. When Tong Lan was confirmed to be healed, the military selection had already been over for 2 months. Damn, he was sick. Sorry. That slipped out. The drugs brought damage to his body, and it was uncertain if that would be permanent. As a result, he lost his qualification to enter the military and was assigned to the outer city. Just before he left, the dormitory teacher packed his luggage for him. A simple box containing antibiotics, bandages, emergency medicine, half a box of multivitamins, a few books, and illustrated manuals he often read, and a copy of the Principles of Heroism. He didn't ask who had put it all together. Hubbard went to the Field Operations Department and his training in isolation. He nodded, then picked up the suitcase and got on the train. If a child of the outer city was adopted, he could live with his parents. Those who weren't would live in a collective, and they would not be allowed to leave the city before they came of age. They could take the basic education courses that the base offered, do odd jobs, or join a mercenary team and receive training in advance. Having his own ideas, Tong Lan refused to be adopted. He began taking classes and training himself to regain his physical health that had been damaged by the drugs. As the intensity of his training broke through his limits time and again, his body miraculously recovered, little by little. Time passed very quickly, but life was not always smooth sailing. Tong Lan was good-looking. With black hair and black eyes, his was a sharp-edged handsomeness, the most outstanding kind among Asians. In collective life, there was no shortage of thugs and troublemakers. Fist fights and bullying the weak were common occurrences. He'd been beaten and experienced his share of suffering. At first, he didn't have the strength to hit back, but as time passed and his training continued, he could take on 3 by himself. Last night, a mercenary from the team he wished to join came to find him and made trouble. He gained a new scar on his right wrist, while the mercenary lost both arms. Dang. Both arms. Earlier today, he put the word out that he better watch himself. He was not afraid. From a young age, he had never been afraid of much. Of his own accord, he took up a defensive position at a winding alleyway and spread the news that he had come here to avoid fighting. This place consisted of the remains of unfinished buildings from when the outer city was being built, so the surroundings were extremely complex. In a fight against many people in an open space, he had no chance of winning. Only in a place like this could he be confident in his success. He waited on a rooftop around the entrance to the group of buildings and didn't see a soul from noon to midnight. That mercenary was ferocious, the type to get even for even the smallest slight, so this was not his style. In the end, he went downstairs and the faint sounds of fighting traveled over from afar. Casually hefted a steel bar and cautiously walked towards the end of the alleyway. By the time he walked over, the sounds of fighting had already stopped. I bet it's Hubbard. Outside the alleyway, there was a wall enclosing a patch of open space where 3 people were currently lying flat. Tanglan jerked his head upward. Within the brief silence, he saw the moonlight and the building's shadow cast on the wall. Where the black and gray shared a border, someone was leaning against the wall. Hi! Hubbard had a chiseled face, chestnut-colored eyes, and slightly curly black hair. He seldom spoke and was usually expressionless, and combined with the fact that he was taller than the other youths of his age, people often gave him a wide berth. He was also very easy to recognize. Upon seeing Tanlan arrive, Hubbard lifted his chin, gesturing towards the 3 people. Without even looking at them, Tanlan walked right up to him. Did you sneak out? No. Hubbard took out a blue ID from his pocket. Using the moonlight, Tanglan saw that it was the outer city's type. What's going on? Tanglan asked. I was disciplined, Hubbard said. I'll be living in the outer city from now on. Tanglan stared at him. Don't lie to me. Hubbard put away his ID card, saying nothing. What is happening? Tanglan did not let him dodge the question at all. Tell me the truth. In the distance, ear-piercing sirens cut through the night. Hubbard asked, What's wrong? Tanglan was silent for a moment. Run, he said. Afterward, because of that savage fight, the 2 of them spent a month in the City Defense Agency's jail. As to exactly why Hubbard had come to the outer city, Tanglan did not ask again. Not until many years later, when he and Hubbard were drinking. As a first-class mercenary, the boss of mercenary team AR-137 rarely got drunk. Of course, his vice captain always had some special tricks to get him drunk. After several rounds, the man was so drunk that he pitched forward toward the table, and Tanglan nearly failed to steady him. I got to know a field operations department officer at the supply depot, Tanglan said in a mild tone as he poured Hubbard another brimming cup of liquor. Said he was a roommate who had trained with you. He asked me if Hubbard had some political bias, otherwise why would he voluntarily put himself in the outer city, sacrificing an excellent future? What do you think, boss? What did I sacrifice? Hubbard replied, only after a long time had passed. Things are pretty good right now. Captain, you are insightful and always victorious. Tanglan began knocking back his own drink. 10 years later, you're humankind's #1 frontline commander in the fight against monsters. If you aren't careful, you can still save the world and be a hero. The alcohol burned so much that his vision went blurry. Upon recalling his recitation of bravery, steadfastness, self-sacrifice, and heroism, he said to himself, "Seems that you don't particularly yearn to be a hero either." Breathy sounds seemed to come from Hubbard's chest. He was laughing. "I have been one," he suddenly said. "Been a what?" "Sacrifice, too." They were both equally drunk. One could not speak clearly, while the other could not hear clearly. Tang Lan tried hard to get closer to Hubbard, and he finally caught a few syllables. "To the vice captain himself," Hubbard said. "You've gone nuts," Tang Lan said. And he heard Hubbard say, "It's individual heroism." Motherfucker. While his breath stuck in his chest, Tang Lan gave him a kick. After he swigged a mouthful of alcohol and smiled. "Have you read any books before, Hubbard?" he said. "Can that phrase be used in this way?" "Welcome to the Highland Research Institute, child." "Hello, sir. Can you describe the process by which you were changed into your current form?" "Let me think." "Okay." At night at the Research Institute, a bonfire was lit on the terrace, illuminating Tang Lan's face. His left cheek was a line of blue-black scales that had not yet completely receded. "Around here," he pointed to an area on the map of the abyss, "I had an argument with our captain regarding whether or not to go deeper. I was on the night watch and my mood was poor. I drove near the perimeter and stayed there." Recalling the initial scene, Tang Lan's eyes went slightly out of focus. "Then I discovered that monster. It was clearly a large flying Class 1, but it was moving close to the ground. Its wingspan was over 10 meters wide. As it ran along the ground, slowly climbing up the mountain slope, it made no noise whatsoever, just like a ghost. I almost assumed it was a shadow." He demonstrated the strange posture of the monster as it traveled by foot, his voice trembling slightly. "I had a gut feeling that it might be very dangerous. It must be. I've dealt with monsters for many years and rarely saw this kind. This kind that would make me feel so threatened. Similar things have been recorded in the mercenary handbooks and field guides, all of them fearsome. I couldn't take any risks. If we attacked it, perhaps everyone in the team would have died. I didn't know how quickly it could move. If we hastily retreated, it was very likely wouldn't have been able to escape at such a distance. I also couldn't warn everyone. If there was movement from our side, it may very well have charged over a high speed," Tang Lan said. "But I was sure that it was charging towards us." At that point, he took a deep breath. "I didn't have a better alternative." Polly asked, "What did you do?" "The storage compartment door was within my reach. I took out 40 pounds of fresh hybrid meat, still bloody, and went in a different direction. Across from me, there was also a mountain," Tang Lan said. "Monster meat that's undergone the hybridization process has various genes, so it's extremely alluring to monsters," Polly said. "That's right. We often used hybrid meat as bait," Tang Lan said. "It was lured in, and I slowly led it in a different direction. After walking for approximately 20 minutes, it began to speed up. I knew with just one look that it had figured out my strength, was preparing to immediately dash over and attack. At this point, we were far away from the camp. I sent them the communication signal to immediately withdraw, then put the meat down and went towards the opposite corner. Unfortunately," he said, "it ate very quickly and had no plans to spare me. I carried a gun with me at all times, but I couldn't drive it off at all. Later, I changed into this, and I knew that I could never return to the base again." His face was slightly pale as he bowed his head. But my teammates should have safely withdrawn. At least I hope they did. They're definitely safe now, Polly gently patted his back. You were very brave, child. You have the qualities of a hero. For some reason, that sentence made Tonglan smile. Then his gaze turned sad. Our captain and I were friends for many years, but I always left without bidding farewell. It was the same this time, too, he said. We probably can't see each other again. This time, there's no place where his individual heroism can be exhibited. The reinforcements from the northern base had arrived at the Highland Research Institute. Yes! This is where they get to meet up again. I'm excited for this. The heavy weapons were on the plains, and with Colonel Liu in command of the aerial fighting, the remaining light troops used large hang gliders to reach the ground. They dispersed in an orderly manner to sweep up the monsters that had attacked the Research Institute. Hubbard was in a large open space to the right of the Research Institute, and behind him were steep cliffs. The Scarlet Triangle sign erected on the side of the cliff read, "Slippery slope, do not approach." The main part of the Research Institute obstructed the majority of his vision. After a small monster was killed by a heavy machine gun, there were no more enemies in the area. The reason why he had come here was because he had looked up into the sky during the skirmish earlier. A bout of bloody and confused combat was taking place in the sky. A huge monster died and fell to the ground, and when he looked up, he saw a black human figure in midair. No, not a human. He had a human body, but sprouting from his back were a pair of massive jet black wings, one of which was broken. It was a xenogenic. When he glimpsed the figure, it was also falling, so it only existed in his field of vision for a single brief second. But that brief second made his soul go blank. "Where are you going?" his teammate shouted at him, but he did not hear it clearly. It was like that voice was coming from a faraway place. Then he rushed frantically to where that person had fallen. It was a neglected place with tangles of vines and waist-high weeds growing wildly. On the surface, nothing could be seen, and behind it was a cliff. His gaze was cold as he stepped in, heavy machine gun in his grasp. Pushing aside the vines, he looked everywhere amidst the waist-high grasses. A gasp that seemed like an illusion seemed to travel to his ears. He whirled around, but all he saw was the grass swaying in the strong wind. "Is anyone there?" he shouted. The gasping seemed to intensify, and the sounds of movement came from over his right shoulder. He looked in that direction, but his gaze abruptly froze. 1,000 meters away, to the left rear of the Research Institute building, where the wind turbines were located, several 3-armed turbines were spinning ferociously in the strong winds. At that very moment, several snow-white tentacles covered in thorns had climbed up the turbine towers and entangled the rotating shafts. At the centers of the turbines, tentacles were strong and sturdy, and the rotations of 2 of the turbines had already ground to an eventual halt. But the monster's goal was not limited to that, for the thorns and tubercles on its tentacles were standing upright. Hubbard had spent the greater part of his life in the wilderness with his team, and as a battle-seasoned veteran, he knew that was an expression of the monster's building strength. It was about to uproot the turbines. The heart of the skirmish was in the open space in front of the Research Institute, so it was doubtful that anyone would notice the distant turbines. Furthermore, the color of the thing was incredibly similar to the turbines themselves. Of course, the most important reason was there was no time. The third turbine stopped spinning. The tentacles were already trembling with exertion. The importance of these turbines was not very clear to Hubbard, but he could imagine it. The Research Institute's communications equipment and scientific research facilities, including the apparatus that the Red Sea of Flames, Unji had just walked into, depended on, All needed large amounts of power. He unloaded the large handheld uranium bomb launcher from his back and took aim. Few individual soldiers could make nimble use of this weapon. It had plenty of firepower, but its weight was terrible, which made aiming extremely difficult, and the recoil could pulverize an ordinary Persian shoulder. Ow! Hubbard knew the vital points of tentacle-class monsters very well, but the Research Institute building severely hindered his aim, and the vital point was not exposed. He drew back. All of his thinking and decision-making were done within 3 seconds of seeing the monster. He drew back. One step, then another step. The wind got louder and louder. Within a few short seconds, he had already passed the do not approach sign. He glanced backwards, seeing the endless sky, and then looked down. He was only 1 step away from the cliff's edge, and the ground beneath his feet was swaying slightly. There was a clicking noise, as though a pebble had tumbled down. Just a bit further. The place where he could kill the monster while not destroying the building and turbines was just a little bit further. He had never thought about wanting to be a hero, but he still took another step back. There were more sounds of rock and earth loosening. The crosshairs of the scope lay right over the monster's vital point. This type of launcher in his hands had ample penetration, firepower, and range. Bang! The tremendous recoil propelled him backward. The edge of the cliff trembled, and the already loose rocks fell like an avalanche. The wind whistled in his ears as he flew backward and began to fall. His vision was filled with a magnificent daybreak. The sun leapt out from one side of the mountains, and the dazzling golden light struck his retinas. Just after this fleeting moment, another figure appeared from above the cliff and leapt down towards him. A few drops of blood landed on Hubbard's cheek. As though he were dreaming, he reached out. Tonglan grabbed him with a hand that was pale from blood loss. Shadows covered the sky, and bloody wings sprang open. The mountain wind blew eastward. Blood had soaked through the clothes on his chest, and he lacked the strength to fly back up. He simply grabbed Hubbard and glided down on the wind like the paper planes he had folded when he was young. Hubbard looked at his eyes. Tonglan's eyes were still as handsome and chilly as before. There were 2 scratches on his cheek, and they were oozing blood. Tonglan, looking at Hubbard as well, smiled. There seemed to be much in Hubbard's eyes. He could see it. He wished to ask why he was here and what he had experienced, and he wished even more to ask why he would sacrifice his own life and fall from the cliff along with him. Tonglan simply smiled and held Hubbard's hand even more tightly. Hubbard responded to him with the same amount of strength. All that remained in the world was the howling wind. They were falling towards an unknown destiny, but there was nothing to fear. You became a hero once, Tonglan said. I'll do the same. In the distance, the mountain sprawled out. The rising sun gushed forth. That was a good one. Like, I'm pretty sure they're both dead at the bottom of a cliff, but like, that was pretty good. I mean, we've got another one. We've got more. It's just the end of that epilogue right there. It's that one. I think I like that one a lot. Like, that might be one of my favorites. They are together. Like, it's giving very much like doomed yaoi feeling to it, and I think like it's just hitting all the feelings right there. They really are together, and that seemed to be all they ever wanted to be, was together. Oh. We're starting to get close to the end of this. Let me see. I think there might only be... Oh my gosh. This is the last one, and then we have Mushroom Diary, Colonel's Diary, and a question. And Base Chronicles. So, like, those are super short, though. So this is the last official epilogue. This did not take as long as I thought it was going to. Epilogue. Skylight. Anji was up in the front of the vehicle. The midday sunlight shone down through the armored vehicle's skylight. Today was his first day going with Lu Feng into the abyss. When humans carried out missions in the wilderness, the armored vehicles served as their mobile encampments. The driver's cabin was up in front. A massive storage space took up 3/4 of the vehicle's body, and the remaining quarter was at the bottom, a low-ceilinged and oppressive rest cabin in which one could barely stand up straight. The rest cabin was nominally divided up by thin sheets of metal, 2 people per compartment, and in the middle there was only a tea table for putting water cups on. Because they had not seen sunlight in a long time, the quilts and pillows carried a slightly musty scent. Yuck. Before arriving at the human base for the first time, Anji had sat in Vance's team's vehicle, and Anzi's memories also contained some impressions related to the armored vehicles. Those impressions all had to do with the narrow, humid, dark, and cramped conditions. The impression was so deeply ingrained in his mind that in the past, as soon as he thought of how the colonel would have to rest in the armored vehicle for 6 months out of the year, he would feel that it was difficult toil. Maybe when the colonel got up from the narrow bed in the rest cabin, he would even bump his head against the ceiling. Then the colonel would be in a bad mood. When the colonel was in a bad mood, the entire team would live beneath a massive shadow, trembling with fear, and nobody would dare to say a single word. The atmosphere would make the colonel's mood worsen and then affect his sleep. So when the colonel woke up the next morning due to lack of sleep, his intelligence would decline by a certain extent, and his actions would no longer be immaculate and flawless. So he would bump his head again. Thus, the team's journey within the abyss would be carried out day after day beneath the massive shadow. On the first night spent in the colonel's vehicle, there was a beautiful starry sky outside the skylight. In a roomy space, Anji sat on a flat bed hugging a pillow. As a cool and comfortable breeze blew in from the side window, he described his initial fantasies to the colonel. The colonel looked like he had heard something baffling. Anji had predicted his confusion, but he hadn't predicted the issue that the colonel paid attention to first. Why did you think my intelligence would decline after waking up in the morning? Lu Feng asked. I expected that you hadn't gotten enough sleep that night, Anji replied. Even if I don't get enough sleep, that kind of scenario wouldn't happen, the colonel said. Furthermore, supposing I bump into the ceiling once, there wouldn't be a second time. Then that means you really have bumped into it before? Anji said. This time, he triumphed over Lu Feng in their battle of words. Hang on. After a short silence, Lu Feng said, such a scenario happened only once when I was 14 or 15 years old. It's like, oh man, you called me out. But no matter what time it is, my mood and intelligence are always very stable. Is that so? Anji looked at him suspiciously. But a while ago, I often noticed that in the morning, you'd be looking at me and not moving at all, as if your thinking speed was very slow. That's because you wake up too late. Lu Feng was expressionless. If you wake up earlier than me, you can look at me. What he said was unexpectedly very logical. Anji turned his back to Lu Feng, expressing his unwillingness to continue conversing. But 3 minutes later, he couldn't hold back anymore. He asked Lu Feng, why are you treated differently from them? The colonel did not sleep in the rest cabin below. His vehicle had obviously been modified. The roomy and bright space above was the colonel's actual living area. The four walls of the living area were all beautiful silvery white. There were windows above and on both sides, and in the limited space, even a separate lavatory had been installed. Next to the bed was a desk, the setup somewhat resembling that of outer city standard rooms. The majority of Lu Feng's extremely perfunctory work notebook was completed on that very desk. In short, this comfortable and bright scene differed from Anji's assumptions. The colonel said, "One arbiter went mad inside his vehicle. There were other reasons for his madness, but the supply depot still upgraded the living environments of the later arbiters." "They may have wanted you guys to cheer up a bit," Anji said. Lu Feng said. "Later on, when I led my men, I had the supply depot modify all the trial court's vehicles and add 5 more vehicles to store materials." "You're so nice," Anji said. Lu Feng's voice was unusually flat, "because I discovered that they often bumped their heads and that they would be in a bad mood." Hugging the pillow, Anji began to laugh. Unexpectedly, what Lu Feng said next was, "Have you bumped your head before?" "I haven't," Anji said. He was different from foolish humans. Then Lu Feng looked him over from top to bottom. "I forgot," he said. "You lack the qualification for it." Anji felt that if there came a day when his life got snuffed out, it would definitely be because Lu Feng angered him to death. He just totally called him a short. Oh. Anji was on the roof of the car. The dusk sunlight spilled across the armored vehicle's skylight. Today was his 30th day staying with Lu Feng in the Abyss. In the Abyss, they had discovered a beautiful valley. Slender blades of verdant grass covered the valley soil, which encircled a clear lake. The almost translucent grasses were suffused with a weak fluorescence. "That's so beautiful," Anji said as he looked around. "Number 29 fine-bladed grass," Lu Feng said, can secrete strongly corrosive liquid and begins hunting when night falls. We should go now." "The grass will eat you. It's very pretty. That's why." Anji got down from the skylight's little ladder, and Lu Feng went to the cabin. The cabin and the living area were connected. Anji could see the colonel at any time, even if he was not sitting in the front passenger seat. And normally, he would also stay in the areas that the colonel could see in the rear-view mirror. In the living area, he read for a while, then began to clean. In fact, though, there wasn't much to clean. It could only be described as tidying up. He closed the colonel's work notebook, put the ballpoint pen in the pen cup at a 45-degree slant to the right, placed the books he himself had flipped through back in their original spots. Then he folded the small ladder and stored it in an unobtrusive corner, wiped down the tube lights, and folded the quilt into a perfect square. A bit of dust had landed on the windowsill, and although there seemed to be no need to wipe it, he always felt that the colonel had a slight obsession with cleanliness. His room in the main city and the city defense agency had an almost neurotic simplicity, bare to the point where they didn't seem lived in. So Anji carefully wiped away that bit of dust, then wiped it 3 more times. After he was done, he looked up and met the gaze of a small bug. The bug was very small. He recognized this type of creature. It was a firefly, which contained few nutrients and lived in groups. Because they were often accompanied by poisonous mushrooms, within the abyss they lived relatively well. At dusk, the little firefly's stomach was aglow with a faint fluorescence. It was very beautiful, and Anji liked it a lot. Back when he was purely a mushroom, he had secretly envied those fluorescent mushrooms that could emit light. But after a moment's hesitation, he nonetheless gently blew the little bug out of the car. As someone he slightly suspected of having an obsession with cleanliness, the colonel probably wouldn't like bugs in the room, he thought. I totally thought he was going to eat it. Like, I know he had an incident with the vine, but, like, he was tempted. He was totally tempted. The entire time, he felt like the Colonel was watching him. Yep. Yeah, he totally wanted to eat that. Sure enough, 3 seconds later, the Colonel asked, "How come you've been wiping the window this whole time? Do you have an obsession with cleanliness?" Anji was rendered speechless. He turned and left the area that was visible in the rearview mirror. Over the next 3 days, Anji constantly observed Lu Feng. First, he discovered that whether the quilt was neatly folded or not would have no effect on the Colonel's mood. The angle at which the ballpoint pen was placed would have no effect on the Colonel's usage of it either. Then he deliberately dirtied the desk. At night, when the Colonel saw the tea stain on the desk, he did not show any obvious displeasure. For picking up the cleaning spray and dissolving it, calmly continued working. Anji began to doubt the importance of his former neurotic cleaning habits. He felt a little lost. At bedtime, Lu Feng held him from behind. "I don't have an obsession with cleanliness. Before, I saw that your rooms were very bare," Anji said quietly. "I thought you liked it like that." Lu Feng kissed his temple. "Thank you," he said. Anji laid his fingers on Lu Feng's arm, saying nothing. After a while, Lu Feng said, "I didn't pay attention to it before." "What about now?" Anji asked. Feng said, "Anything's fine, as long as you're comfortable with it." Pillowing on Lu Feng's arm, Anji looked down. This was only a minor matter, but he had thought about it a lot. I just thought, with some difficulty he organized his words, his gaze blank. "Sometimes I don't really understand you." "It's impossible to completely understand someone," Lu Feng said. But after saying that, Anji's voice trailed off. Humankind's matters were too numerous, and their emotions were too numerous as well, he thought. Humans were always speculating on and thinking about other humans. Sometimes he really wished that he and Lu Feng could be two mushrooms, blown by the same wind, drenched by the same rain, spending their entire lifetimes growing together, nothing more. He turned to face Lu Feng, but Lu Feng got up. Anji watched him, bewildered. The Colonel pulled open the nightstand drawer, took something out, and held it out to him. In the darkness, it emitted a beautiful pale green fluorescence. Wide-eyed, Anji accepted it. It was a glass bottle, and inside it were more than a dozen little fireflies, the same kind as the one he saw that one evening. They flew around in the transparent glass bottle. Now that it was nighttime, the sky had completely darkened, and those tiny lights were even more beautiful than they'd been at dusk. "Wow," Anji said. He held the bottle tight. The Colonel said, "For you to play with." After saying that, he opened the glass bottle, and the fireflies flew out. As they were social creatures, they flew together from one side of the room to the other, from the floor to the ceiling, resembling tiny floating lights as they did so. Anji sat up in bed and grabbed at them a few times. They were a species that had a close relationship with mushrooms, so they did not avoid him, but rather circled around him. I'm going to have to look that up, see if fireflies and mushrooms actually have like enough of a common like genetic makeup or relationship, because I've never really thought about fireflies and mushrooms having any sort of relationship other than like it's a bug and it's not a plant. A not plant, it's a fungus. Huh. Something to think on. Anji sat up in bed and grabbed at them a few times. They were a species that had a close relationship with mushrooms, so they did not avoid him, but rather circled around him. "When did you catch them? I didn't notice." With a smile, he turned back to look at Lu Feng and discovered that the colonel seemed to have been attentively watching him ever since he took out the glass bottle. He suddenly got it. It was impossible for someone to completely understand another person, but humans have always been trying to understand each other. This was also a type of joy, like being drenched by the same type of rain. These guys are just so cute now. Like, it was heartrending, heartbreaking, world-ending stuff in the main book, and now this epilogue is just like pouring on the sugar. Anji was up against the vehicle door. Misty drizzle landed on the skylight, turning it all hazy. This was his third time going with Lu Feng into the abyss. He was currently turning into a mushroom. Oop! No! Oh, man. There it is. I'm going to put this over here. I dropped the page. Wait. Fourth. Nope, too far. Sorry, I lost the page. Oh my goodness. There it is. Anji was up against the vehicle door. This was his third time going with Lu Feng into the abyss. He's currently turning into a mushroom. Hype climbed up Lu Feng's clothes, and his shape gradually transformed. After becoming a mushroom and casting off the shackles of his human body, he could freely go here and there in the abyss. Halfway through the change, Lu Feng pressed down on his stomach with one hand. The man had always liked to play like this. Lu Feng asked, "When will you have a baby spore?" His tone of voice was as natural as if he was asking, "When will you give me a child?" Of course, this wasn't a natural thing. Firstly, Anji could not give birth to children. He could only grow a spore that belonged to himself alone, an endospore, according to Polly, the embryonic form of a new body. Secondly, even he himself did not know when he would have a spore. As for when his initial spore had started growing and the reason why it had started growing, he no longer remembered. He said, "I don't know." Then he asked, "Do you want a baby spore very badly?" "I do." "Why?" "It's very entertaining." Anji was angered by this man once more. Was toying with his subconsciousness really such a joyful thing? He said, "I won't give it to you to play with." Lu Feng earnestly rubbed his stomach, as if by doing so he'd be able to speed up the baby spore's growth. Anji couldn't be bothered to acknowledge him. Continuing to change shape, he wound his hype securely around the man. Lu Feng plucked apart some of his hype, then tied 2 wisps of it into a bow. But Anji had special knot untying skills. By reversing the original steps, he untied it. Lu Feng tied a more complex knot. Anji untied it. Another knot, another untying. In the end, Anji completely retracted those 2 wisps of hype. The game was so childish, even human younglings would not deign to play it. Lu Feng laughed softly, then scooped up large clumps of hype in order to smooth Anji's ruffled strands. By no means did Anji need such a service. Every time Lu Feng smoothed down the hype, he retracted some of them. 10 minutes later, his body had shrunk by 3/4 of its usual shape. He was now only the size of a coconut. Lu Feng seemed to suddenly realize something. He asked, "You can get smaller?" He could. This was something Anji himself had only recently realized as well. He could control his own size, but he didn't know if it had anything to do with how he used to eat things willy-nilly. He obviously hadn't eaten such things in a long time. Then he heard Lu Feng ask, "Can you get even smaller?" Anji tried hard to retract his hype and became the size of an apple. With further shrinking, he became the size of a ping-pong ball. seemed that he could still keep going. Feeling his control over his own hype, Anji continued getting smaller. His body suddenly felt weightless as it left the ground. He was startled, but then he realized that Lu Feng had picked him up. And after that, he was placed in the chest pocket of Lu Feng's uniform. Oh no. With a click, the button snapped into place. I'll take you out to play, the colonel said with a relaxed voice, as though he were in high spirits. Anji was rendered speechless. The colonel had definitely obtained some kind of strange joy. Anji was in the vehicle. The early morning sunlight spilled in through the armored vehicle sunlight. This was the 4th time he and Lu Feng had gone to the abyss. He woke up, but he did not get out of bed. He also could not get out of bed. He wrapped himself up in a quilt and refused to get out until Lu Feng had prepared a cup of milk and placed it in front of him. Lu Feng asked, "Are you feeling a bit better now?" Anji nodded. "Does it still hurt?" Anji shook his head. Then he nodded. With a slight frown, Lu Feng came over to Anji and peeled away the thin quilt that he had wrapped himself with. Anji allowed him to peel it away. The surface of the quilt was made from a delicate fabric, both smooth and soft, yet when compared to the translucent and delicate milk-white skin, it seemed coarse. But now on the skin there were crisscrossing marks, and just below the left side of his chest was broken skin surrounded by a large patch of red. It had originally been nothing at all. Anji had gotten up this morning and put on his shirt, but the fabric just happened to rub against the wound, causing it to sting, and he gasped softly. Lu Feng pulled open a drawer and took out the alcohol, then dipped a cotton ball in it and cleansed the wound before applying medicine. So the skin turned red again. Anji's skin was too delicate, like the white mushrooms newly grown after the rain, leaking juice with only a pinch. After the medicine was applied, the area around the wound felt chilly. Anji wrapped himself up tightly in the quilt again, and he was pulled into Lu Feng's arms along with the quilt, where he rested his head against Lu Feng's right shoulder, leaning against him. A little while later, it suddenly occurred to him that this man was the culprit responsible for the wound, and that he should not peacefully coexist with him. Anji tried to get away, but he had already been restrained in place. He struggled fruitlessly, and in the process, the fabric of the quilt rubbed against his wound again. "What do you want to bet?" that Lu Feng bid him. "Don't move," Lu Feng said. Anji was at a loss for words. This man's tone of voice was not only lacking the slightest hint of guilt, but it also sounded like he was criticizing him for squirming around. It was extremely hateful. Just so happened that he could see Lu Feng's neck as soon as he looked up. He ground his teeth. Then he was hugged even tighter, and he could not move at all anymore. Anji mulled over it and was still very unhappy in the end. It was not a temporary unhappiness, but rather a mood that incrementally developed over many days, been constantly wishing to find fault with Lu Feng. This time, there was finally a wound worth noting. He mumbled, "You're so mean." Lu Feng asked, "Am I?" "Yes." "No, I'm not." Lu Feng pulled him over. "I'm being very attentive." And he did not know what he was talking about. Supposing all of this was the aftermath of being attentive, then when you are not being attentive, do you take people apart and eat them? Anji frowned. "It's impossible." "When you go too far, I struggle every time," Anji said. "And I cry." Feng looked at him. "But you ignore me," Anji said, "and you even become more mean." The new day began with criticism from a little mushroom. Lu Feng looked down at the mushroom in his arms. His voice was soft and delicate as he complained under his breath. Anji finished speaking, but Lu Feng still wished to hear him talk more. So he asked, "Is there anything else?" Anji glared at him, the meaning of which was, "Is this not enough yet?" I thought that was the way to pay attention to you, Lu Feng replied. Anji was confused. Is there anything else? Anji asked. Yes, Lu Feng said. You ought to learn to control yourself. Anji did not know what he was talking about. Could not possibly have done anything wrong. He looked straight at Lu Feng, his voice cold as he said clearly, There's something wrong with you. See, Lu Feng said, you're acting childish again. Ji confirmed that there was indeed a species difference between himself and Lu Feng. If he could reach over to pick up the pillow, the first thing he would do would be to throw the pillow right into Lu Feng's face. But now his hands were both bound by Lu Feng, so he could only maintain a deadlock with this man with his eyes. After a while, Lu Feng was the first to smile. He lowered his head to kiss the corner of Anji's lips. Anji turned his head to avoid his touch, but he was restrained. First, he found himself tilted up by the chin and deeply kissed a few times, only being released after he could not catch his breath. Then Lu Feng gently kissed the corners of his eyes. That's kind of one of the things he seems to like doing. Like I wonder... Breath skimmed past his ear. Lu Feng no longer touched him through the quilt, reaching in with his right hand to grasp Anji's waist, where there were certainly still red marks from last night. We were right. Anji trembled all over. He said, I don't want to. I can't hear you. He brought up the past again. Then every time I cry, you can't see it either. It's like I'm beating you. Crying is useless. The new day began with unspoken criticism of the colonel. Oh, it was definitely spoken. I wouldn't call that unspoken. Anji was still in the vehicle. Starlight spilled in through the armored vehicle's skylight. This was the fourth time he and Lu Feng had gone to the abyss. The third time, Anji mumbled on and on to himself. The colonel put forth a solution. Without any expression, he leaned against the back of the bed. Do it yourself. With an expression and tone of voice that was like he was at the genetic examination office at the city gates next to the examination device, he said, Do it yourself. Facing him, Anji hesitated for a while before several strands of hype crept onto the colonel. Then he leaned down and kissed the colonel's Adam apple. Then he kissed the side of the colonel's neck and contemplated his next move. Then it occurred to him that he was wearing loose white pajamas while the colonel was still nearly dressed, so he began to struggle with the shirt buttons. He was intimately familiar with this shirt, for he was an emotionless washing machine, after all. But not only did the shirt not open up as a result of their friendship, it was even more difficult to undo because of the angle. After undoing the first button, he said to Lu Feng, Undo them yourself. Just like how Lu Feng would sometimes say to him. Colonel Lu remained unmoved. A few more strands of hype climbed up. Humbling himself, the colonel undid the second button in an unhurried manner. Anji continued to think. You're someone who came from the third underground floor, he heard Lu Feng say, his voice slightly hoarse and containing a hint of a smile. You should be a bit more practiced. Anji was silent. Then he said in a small voice, It's not like I learned anything. And he could not go back and learn again. I can see that, Lu Feng said. When this man lowered his voice, it contained a distant magnetism. Anji gave a start, feeling numb from his ears to his back. So he once again recalled the past. When he first met Lu Feng, he had even personally said, I work on the third underground floor, and the colonel had responded with an "Oh." Anji was very curious about the impression the colonel had of him at that time. Seeming to understand him, the colonel said, I didn't know you were a mushroom then. I thought that if you didn't work on the third floor, there was no way for you to survive in the base. He nonchalantly glanced at Anji, then continued. Now it seems that even so, you can't support yourself. The number of hypae increased. The colonel stopped talking. Right now, Anji's greatest wish was that the colonel would be like that of his mannequin, unable to say a single word. He lay his slender white fingers on Lu Feng's chest, waiting for the other man to finish undoing the buttons so he could hold his hand. Then he saw the colonel look at that place, seemingly also contemplating. It was the kind of expression he only had when contemplating something serious. A few seconds later, Lu Feng said, "In the past, you deceived me." Anji tilted his head. Slow on the uptake, ignorant of what the crime of indecency is, doing illegal work with monthly wages lower than the baseline. The colonel listed these 3 items, seemingly deep in thought. These can't be explained by excessive simple-mindedness and limited intelligence. Anji was at a loss for words. He said, "Stop right there." But it was obvious that the colonel's hearing would selectively stop working. That night was also very unusual. You invited me to stay in your room. Anji said, "That was because you had nowhere else to go." The problem lay with how you wanted to give your toothbrush to me. You didn't understand human social etiquette at all. Anji said nothing, as though his hearing had also selectively stopped working. Unless that was a clumsy flirting method you learned on the 3rd floor. But that night you were very well behaved, the colonel said. Anji knew the colonel was talking about the night of Judgment Day, when he had invited the man to sleep for a night in his room. He went to hold Lu Feng, pressing his forehead against the other man's chest. Even through a layer of fabric, there was a warm and solid sensation, and he could hear a steady heartbeat in his ears. All sorts of things had happened, just like a dream. Anji imagined another possibility. Then Anji said, supposing that at that time it truly was a coincidental mistake. If he truly was a worker on the 3rd underground floor, or if he had mindlessly followed Mr. Shaw's suggestion, using another method to get close to the arbiter, what would he have done that night? The xenogenic, with ulterior motives, took in the arbiter, who had nowhere to return to, when they did not yet know each other well and were even on their guard against the other. But it was also at a time full of death, unrest, and abandonment. Supposing that, at that time, Anjia had leaned over to kiss Lu Feng on the lips or undid the buttons of his coat, what would they have been like? Anji didn't know. He only knew that to this day, when he thought of Lu Feng's back on the night of Judgment Day, his heart would violently tremble. He looked at those green eyes and seemed to remember or return to that moment when the blood-scented evening wind howled throughout the city. So that expression appeared on his face again. Quiet, grief-laden expression. God did not love the world. God loved the world. The bed, the desk, and the decorations here used to be like the base's standard room. At night, the room darkened. The sound of the wind came from an unknown place, much like that night. The Anji from that time was also like this, with snow-white soft cotton pajamas and an innocent face. Lu Feng put a hand on his shoulder, his gaze seemingly tangible. Anji first dropped his gaze slightly, then lifted it again to meet his eyes. His eyelashes also trembled slightly, like the minute shake of flowers and leaves when a butterfly perched upon them. Lu Feng stared at him for a long time, as though he were staring at the twilight above fields of snow. Until this twilight descended and Anji leaned over to kiss him on the corner of his lips. Soundlessly, he moved to kiss him on the lips. The past flickered out. Whew! So now we are actually done with the epilogues, and we have just the Mushroom Diary, the Colonel Diary, A Question, and Base Chronicles, which all are very quick, but I'm I'm going to take my last tea break real quick. Perfect timing, too. I'm running out of tea. All right. The Mushroom's Diary. News had come from the northern base. Beneath the ruins of the main city, they planned to establish a human history museum in the center of the ventilation ducts, which avoided being blown up by a stroke of luck. For this reason, they asked for almost everyone's memoirs. Many of the people at the Research Institute had handed theirs in, but Lu Feng hasn't. He doesn't have a memoir, nor does he write in a diary. His work notebook was equivalent to a diary, but those words were too slapdash, and it had already been lost. In all of humankind's records thus far, the Arbiter himself had not left behind any words whatsoever. However, amidst humankind's records, there was no shortage of writings and discussions about him. Humans think their history is like a long flowing river. He doesn't speak, hiding within the long river, yet he seems to be behind the shadow of every single ripple. Once many years have gone by, how would people think of him? Would there be people who love him? Would there be people who hate him? Would there be people who doubt that he existed? What can I do to make him more real? I don't know. He's loved people before. His mother, his friends, his subordinates. He hasn't hated anyone before, though. He also likes humankind, but there were at least 2 times in which he felt bone-deep loneliness amidst the crowds. The first time was on Judgment Day at the city gates, and the second time was when the Arbiter's mannequin was shot by the opposition faction. At that time, would he have felt lost? What would have caused him to feel lost? The crowd that didn't understand him, himself, all of humankind, or the fact that humans would never be able to understand each other? I don't know. Every time I think of those things, I feel so upset that I cannot speak. There will also be some times when I think, why are he and I always together? Will he be able to free himself from eternal loneliness by holding my Haipei in his hand? I can talk with him, but what can we talk about? He and I are the 2 most dissimilar people, and the people of the Research Institute have never been able to understand why we are able to peacefully coexist. I asked Polly, and Polly said, "Actually, you're the 2 most similar people in the world." I didn't understand. Polly said, "Once you get a little older, when you reach the age where you can look back on the past, you'll understand." But at this point in time, where would he be? And where would I be? We'll probably be traveling around the world together, I suppose. All right, I'll stop writing here. I have to go prepare a New Year's gift for him. Colonel's Diary. The mushroom said that my diary was too slapdash, but his is by no means honest either. What he says he doesn't know, he actually knows all of it. Childish. That's it. That's it for the Colonel's Diary. A question. The engine roared, and beneath the clear winter sunlight, the powerful airflow of the massive fighter plane lifted the snow on the ground, sending it flying along the dirt and dust. Lu Feng walked towards it, and the crew commander's voice came from the walkie-talkie. "News has come from the northern base. Monsters have invaded for the first time since winter began, and the scale is of an unprecedented large size, so the base is continuing to ask for reinforcements. Let's hurry." After the final bell toll, the northern base's military forces were divided into 2 branches. One part stayed at the original base, while the other part was stationed at the Highland Research Institute to assist with the collection of samples of living things from the abyss and advance the research of substance frequencies. Since the base and the Research Institute had reached an accord, it was only natural that the northern base would seek the Highland troops' aid upon being attacked. But Anji thought, if it weren't for such a critical pressing task, he doubted that Lu Feng would have ever returned to the northern base again in this lifetime. In other words, he had assumed Lu Feng had no plans of going back to that place, but after receiving the emergency mission, the colonel still chose to walk towards the PL-1109's landing pad. Just like that similarly dusty day 3 years ago, when he went to the PL-1109 and went to the underground city base across the ocean. Because he was thinking, he fell a few steps behind. It just so happened that he could see the back view of Lu Feng up ahead, which was identical to that earlier time. The colonel always went toward the unknown like this, never looking back. Just as Anji had that thought, he saw the colonel turn around and look at him. Beneath the silvery sky, a chilly and beautiful facial profile. Anji looked at him while standing in place. "What are you thinking about?" the colonel asked. Only then did Anji walk over, catching up to him. "You're really handsome," he said in a small voice. Then he saw the colonel smile. It was like the fluttering of the aurora or the drifting of snowflakes. The colonel rarely smiled so obviously. So Anji also asked, "What are you thinking about?" "I was recalling that time at the base," the colonel said, "when the incident at the underground city base happened." Surprisingly, this man was thinking of that time as well. Saying nothing, Anji listened to him continue. "I saw you before I left," he said. Anji hummed in response. He remembered that they had touched upon the matter of the mushroom soup, and then the colonel had told him to take care of himself. He said, "You also said that you may not be able to return." "That sounds right," the colonel said. "Felt like you were worried about me and thus said a few extra things." "Just one thing," Anji replied. The colonel smiled again. The light reflecting off the snow illuminated the silver badge on his combat uniform. The combat uniform was black camo, black fingerless gloves, and a tactical vest. Gave the feeling of a casual yet clean strength, unlike the uniforms worn in peacetime. "There was indeed something left unsaid," Lu Feng said. "I wanted to ask you." He cut himself off. Anji asked him, "What?" Lu Feng was expressionless, seemingly weighing his words. So Anji became even more curious. Just as he thought that the colonel was going to say something of vital importance and great depth. The colonel gestured to himself with his gun and asked, "Do I look good?" A sassy asshole. Oh, goodness. Base Chronicles. In 2020, the geomagnetic field began to swiftly weaken. The same year in Asia, Plan A, constructing a simulated geomagnetic field, began. That same year, in North America, Plan B, constructing the human's underground city, began. In 2030, the geomagnetic field disappeared, so the biosphere fell into dysfunction, the climate changed drastically, and the solar radiation was abnormal. The desert age had begun. In 2040, Plan B was successful, and the underground city was opened up to inhabitants. In 2043, Plan A was successful, and a weak magnetic field covered the entire world. In 2045, with the marine life of the Pacific Ocean at the center, species all over the world mutated. The Calamity Age had arrived, and the war began. That same year, construction of the northern base and southeastern base were completed. That same year, the underground city base assisted in the construction of the Virginia base. In 2050, in the war, humankind suffered tremendous losses, and the fusion faction was established. In 2053, humans observed widespread genetic mutations and birth rates plummeted. In 2061, there was a mutant rodent upsurge and the southeastern base fell. In 2066, the women of humankind's 4 bases voted unanimously to pass the Rose Manifesto. The bases introduced a fertility scoring system, and women with a score above 60 signed an agreement with the bases to voluntarily subject themselves to artificial insemination. In 2067, at the northern base, Judgment Day occurred. The Arbiter's Code was introduced. Holding the license to kill people, the Arbiter indiscriminately shot all who were contaminated. In 2070, the fusion faction defected, and the Highland Research Institute was established. In 2073, the Virginia base fell. In 2115, the northern base, the Rose Incident, broke out. Women united to revolt against the base's envious, crushing grasp on fertility. The base suppressed it, and all women with a score over 60 were confined in the Garden of Eden. In 2135, communication conditions deteriorated even further. The northern base and underground city base closed the daily communication channel, leaving only the emergency channel open. In 2150, the northern base's population experienced steady growth, and the recovery age began. In 2154, genetic examination technology matured. The story begins. About the author. She is a Xinjiang Wenzhoucheng contract author who began serializing web novels in 2016. Specializing in fantasy, Shi has a dynamic writing style and has also written xianxia, sci-fi, and other genres. Aside from her most famous work, Little Mushroom, her other published titles include Cultivating in Sea, The Cat's Rose, and Shenshu. Many of Xinxi's novels have been licensed for multimedia adaptations. And with that, we have arrived at the end of Little Mushroom. What a journey. I'm so excited. Right? Love it. This was such an exciting journey, and I cannot wait to keep doing this. I hope you all enjoyed the tale of Little Mushroom, and hope that you continue to tune in. We will be starting Golden Terrace next week because that was what was decided. Unless people put in a ton of votes contrary to that, I'll check right now. But I believe at current rates that we are starting Golden Terrace next week. That one I have read, but it's been a very long time. So it'll be like new. I believe that there is hang on, I have it right here. I believe that there's like a historical little intro. Or am I thinking of a different book? I may be thinking of a different book where they have like a little... Okay, they have a prologue, so that's fine. I don't have to read from the back of the book. But we will be starting Golden Terrace next week, and I cannot wait to see you there. I think we will probably switch back to 8 o'clock. Yeah, I think we'll probably switch back to 8 CST. I did this early because I kind of thought this would probably take about 4 hours. We surprisingly got through this pretty quickly. But yeah, we will start Golden Terrace next week. Probably do 4 chapters, depending. I need to double check. Oh, these are short chapters. Maybe 6. Yeah, I can do 6. All right. So yeah, prologue to 6 or 7. We'll see. We'll see what the time span is. Next time it'll probably be like 2.5 hours. That seems pretty good. I'm happy with that. But I am so excited that we did Little Mushroom together. That's really cool. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Rosebud Reads, and I hope you had a wonderful time listening in. I'm so happy you've been here. And on that note, I will get the Golden Terrace set up for next time. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your evening or morning, depending on when you're listening to this. Bye-bye. Hang on, I gotta find the end stream. There it is. Bye.